Story 1. My family sent a group message. We've talked, and we think it's best if you step away for now. No explanation, no gratitude, just a dismissal. I replied, understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family entirely. Take care. That night at 3:17 a.m., I closed their $87,000 fund with a single click. By sunrise, my phone had 89 missed calls. My dad's voicemail said, "What happened?" The bank flagged everything. So, yeah, this happened about a year ago, but I'm finally ready to share this story. Sorry if this gets long, but I need to get this off my chest because honestly, it's been eating at me for months. It was a Thursday night around 7 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd just gotten home from a brutal client meeting that ran 3 hours longer than planned. I was heating up some leftover curry and thinking about finishing this quarterly report for my consulting firm when my phone buzzed. Group message. The whole family was in there. Mom, Dad, my Aunt Carol, even Uncle Jim, who never really participates in these digital family discussions. The message was from Mom, short and brutally direct. We've discussed it, and we think it's best if you step away from the family for now. Rebecca needs space. We all do. I just stared at my phone for like a full minute. The kitchen was dead silent except for the microwave humming. I read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. My Aunt Carol reacted with a thumbs up emoji within 30 seconds. Just like that. A simple thumbs up to cutting me out of the family, like I was some toxic acquaintance they needed to block. Uncle Jim added a, "This is hard but necessary" message. Dad stayed silent, which somehow hurt more than if he'd piled on. I sat down at my kitchen table, curry getting cold, and typed back, understood. I'll respect that and step away from the family. Take care. I wanted to say more. I wanted to ask what I'd done wrong, wanted to defend myself, wanted to point out the irony of them cutting off their primary financial support. But I didn't. I hit send and put my phone face down on the counter. That night I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about that message over and over. The casualness of it, the finality, the coordinated nature. They'd clearly discussed this without me, made a group decision about my place in the family, like I was some kind of problem to be solved. Around 3 a.m., lying there staring at the ceiling, something clicked. Fine. They wanted me to step away? I'd step away completely. I got up, grabbed my laptop, and logged into the joint account I'd been managing for 5 years. You know, the one that paid for Mom's insulin, helped Dad with his mortgage payments, kept Rebecca's apartment afloat when her freelance graphic design work dried up for months at a time. The account that had $3,247 in it at that moment, with my automatic monthly contribution of $1,500 scheduled to hit the next morning. I canceled the auto transfer. Then I transferred the remaining balance to my personal checking account. Then I closed the entire account. The whole process took maybe 10 minutes. 5 years of financial responsibility ended with a few mouse clicks at 3:17 a.m. My phone started going absolutely crazy at sunrise. 89 missed calls by the time I checked it around 8 a.m. Dad left this voicemail where he sounded all shaky and panicked. Son, what happened? The bank flagged everything. Mom's prescription bounced, the mortgage payment failed. Something about insufficient funds. Are you okay? Why would you do this? Call me back immediately. There were text messages flooding in too. Mom, the pharmacy is saying there's no money for my insulin. What's going on? Rebecca, my rent check bounced and my landlord is freaking out. Did something happen to the account? I just texted the group chat. I'm honoring your decision to step away. But here's the thing. They had absolutely no idea what they'd just done. They didn't realize how much I was quietly holding everything together behind the scenes. That message hit me like a betrayal, because I'd been carrying them financially for years without asking for anything back, without even asking for basic respect or gratitude. This is that story, the story of how I became my family's financial life support, and what happened when they decided to cut me out while expecting the money to keep flowing. To really understand why that group message felt like a knife to the chest, I gotta go back about 5 years. That's when everything started falling apart for my family, and somehow I became the designated fixer for problems I didn't create. Rebecca was in bad shape mentally. This was her second hospitalization for severe depression and anxiety in 18 months, and she'd been spiraling for weeks before Dad finally called me. I was at my desk working late on a client proposal when my phone rang at 9 p.m. Dad was crying in a pharmacy parking lot, which immediately sent my anxiety through the roof because Dad never cries. She's not going to make it, son, he said, voice cracking. They won't admit her to the intensive program without upfront payment, and we're completely tapped out. The insurance is fighting everything, saying it's not medically necessary. I don't know what to do. I could hear Mom crying in the background, and Dad trying to hold it together while explaining that Rebecca had been having panic attacks so severe she couldn't leave her apartment for days at a time. She'd lost her job at the marketing firm because she'd stopped showing up. Her savings were gone. Their savings were gone from helping her through the first crisis. I was 27 then, working insane hours as a business consultant, but making decent money, around $85,000 annually, which felt like a fortune after growing up in a family that always struggled financially. That night, I didn't even hesitate. I logged into my savings account and transferred $15,000 directly to the treatment center. Just like that. My emergency fund, gone in one transaction. Everyone called it a miracle when Rebecca got stable after 3 months in the program. She came home looking healthier, talking about coping mechanisms and therapy techniques. The whole family treated it like divine intervention, but nobody ever mentioned that I made it possible. Nobody offered to pay me back either. Not that I expected it, really, but some acknowledgement would have been nice. But that was just the beginning. Within 6 months, Mom got diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and her medication costs were astronomical. Dad's hours got cut at the warehouse where he'd worked for 15 years. Some corporate restructuring nonsense that eliminated half the full-time positions. Every time something went wrong, every time another bill came in or another crisis hit, they'd call me. At first, it was small stuff. Just $300 for this month, we'll figure it out next time. But then Rebecca moved out and immediately fell behind on her rent. Then Mom needed dental work that insurance wouldn't cover. Then Dad's car needed major repairs, and without it, he couldn't get to work. One evening, after a particularly stressful day at work, Dad called with a proposition. Son, we were thinking, would you be willing to help us set up something more permanent, like a family emergency fund? We hate asking you for money piece by piece like this. I was single, working 80-hour weeks, making good money. I lived in a small one-bedroom apartment, drove a 10-year-old Honda, and had no social life because I was always either working or dealing with some family crisis. It made sense, right? They needed stability. I had the means to provide it. So I set up this account in my name and started routing payments through it. Mom's prescriptions, Rebecca's therapy copays, Dad's car payment when he fell behind, even their phone bill sometimes when things got tight. When they fell behind on other stuff, they gave me access to all their passwords and account numbers. Not because they trusted me exactly, but because they didn't want to deal with the hassle of managing their own financial disasters. They called me the responsible one, but what they really meant was the convenient one, the one who could be counted on to solve problems with money instead of requiring them to make difficult choices or sacrifices. My life turned into this elaborate ledger of quiet sacrifices. I downgraded my apartment to a cheaper place in a worse neighborhood. I stopped taking vacations. Couldn't afford them anymore. I ate instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches for dinner more nights than I want to admit, all so I could keep being their financial safety net. The crazy part? None of them ever asked how I was doing. Not once. When I'd show up to family dinners exhausted from working 7 days a week, they'd barely acknowledge me before diving into discussions about Rebecca's latest crisis, or Dad's job search, or Mom's latest doctor appointment. I became this background figure who existed solely to solve financial problems. I started keeping track of everything in a spreadsheet, not to be petty, but because the amounts were getting so large I needed to understand where my money was going. By year 3, I was contributing over $1,800 monthly to keeping my family afloat, on top of random emergency payments that could be anywhere from $200 to $2,000. The worst part was watching them make the same mistakes over and over. Rebecca would get stable, start freelancing again, then take on way too many projects, burn out, and disappear for weeks. Dad would get temp work, spend the first paycheck on unnecessary stuff, then panic when the rent was due. Mom would skip taking her medication to save money, end up in the emergency room, and create a medical bill that wiped out any savings. But whenever I tried to suggest they needed to change their patterns, I became the bad guy. You don't understand what it's like to struggle, Rebecca would say. Easy for you to judge when you have a steady paycheck, Dad would add. Like I hadn't grown up in the same struggling household, like I hadn't worked my way through college while they took on debt, like success had just fallen into my lap. The thing about being everyone's bailout is that it becomes expected incredibly fast. What started as emergency help became routine support, and routine support became entitlement. Rebecca got into a terrible car accident in 2020. Completely not her fault. Some drunk driver ran a red light and T-boned her. She was in the hospital for a week with a broken collarbone and concussion, and while she was recovering, the insurance company started playing games. They wanted to dispute liability, delay payments, generally make her life miserable while she was already dealing with physical therapy and trauma. I paid for the personal injury attorney, $5,000 retainer, just like that. The lawyer was this sharp woman who took one look at the police report and said the case was a slam dunk, but it might take 18 months to settle. Meanwhile, Rebecca couldn't work because of the head injuries and was having panic attacks about driving. Then Rebecca moved in with this guy Tyler, who was definitely bad news. I met him once at a family barbecue and immediately got sketchy vibes. He was one of those guys who talks big about his business ventures, but never seems to have any actual income. He'd order expensive meals when we went out, but somehow never had his wallet. Classic mooch behavior. Rebecca was completely infatuated, though. She moved into his apartment and started talking about how they were going to start a creative agency together. Within 3 months, she discovered he'd been using her credit cards to fund his business ideas and had been cheating on her with his ex-girlfriend. When she finally left him in the middle of the night, she literally fled with just her laptop and a suitcase. I was the one who sent her $1,200 for a hotel and groceries while she looked for a new place. Then I covered her security deposit and first month's rent when she found a studio apartment. Never saw a dime back from any of it, but at least she was safe. They never asked where all this money was coming from. They never saw the spreadsheet I kept to track my own expenses, trying to stay afloat while supporting everyone else. They just expected it, like I was some kind of government assistance program that existed solely for their benefit. The breaking point started around Christmas 2 years ago. I'd been particularly stressed about work. We were in the middle of a major client transition that required me to work basically every waking hour for 6 weeks straight. I was surviving on energy drinks and takeout, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, and pushing myself to the absolute limit. Rebecca texted me on December 23rd, asking if I could buy her new tires for Christmas. Not requesting, asking if I could do it, like it was a given that I would. Her car needed 4 new tires, and she'd gotten a quote for $800. This was right after I'd paid her rent that month because her biggest freelance client had delayed payment until after the new year, or LV. I was sitting in my office at 11 p.m., working on a presentation that was due the day after Christmas, when her text came through. I just stared at it for a minute, feeling something break inside me. I typed back, "I just paid your rent this month. I can't cover both." The response was immediate. "Seriously? It's Christmas. I'm not asking for anything crazy." Then came the emotional manipulation. "Fine. I guess I'll just drive on bald tires and hope I don't die in a crash. But at least you'll have saved $800. When I didn't respond immediately, she went crying to my parents. Within an hour, I had Dad texting me, "Just try to be a little more understanding, son. She's struggling with her mental health after everything with Tyler. You don't know how hard that is." That's when something in me just cracked. I didn't blow up or anything, but I started doing something different. I began documenting everything. Every dollar I sent, every bill I paid, every guilt trip they laid on me, every excuse they made. I created backups, emailed myself bank statements, took screenshots of conversations. Not to hold it over them or anything, but just to remind myself it was real, that I wasn't imagining how much they were draining from me without ever saying thanks, that the sacrifices I was making were significant and meaningful, even if they couldn't see them. Meanwhile, my own life was falling apart. I was working myself to death, had zero savings beyond what I kept for absolute emergencies, couldn't even afford to go on dates because every spare dollar went to them. My apartment was a disaster because I was never home. I hadn't taken a real vacation in 3 years. I was eating dollar store food while paying for their restaurant meals. But when I tried to bring up my own stress, they'd change the subject or remind me how lucky I was to have a good job. Lucky. Like I hadn't earned every dollar through 14-hour days and constant pressure. Like success had just been handed to me while they suffered through no fault of their own. The worst part was watching them waste the money I worked so hard to provide. Rebecca would Venmo me for groceries, then post Instagram stories from expensive restaurants. Dad would ask for help with utilities, then mention buying a new power tool the same week. Mom would need money for medical expenses, then show up wearing new jewelry. I started asking for receipts, and they acted like I was being controlling. "You don't trust us?" Rebecca asked when I requested proof that the $300 I'd sent had actually gone to her therapist. "We're not your employees," Dad said, when I asked him to forward me the actual utility bill instead of just telling me the amount. But they had no problem treating me like their personal bank account. Last month, everything came to a head in the most ridiculous way possible. Rebecca had been doing better. Therapy was helping. She'd landed a few good freelance contracts, and she'd been consistently making her rent for 3 months straight. I was actually starting to feel optimistic that maybe, finally, The family was getting back on stable ground. Then she texted the family group at 10 a.m. on a Tuesday. Hey, I know money's tight, but could the fund cover a wellness retreat in Colorado? It's for my mental health recovery, and my therapist thinks it would really help. I was in a client meeting when the message came through, so I didn't see it right away. When I checked my phone an hour later, there was already a whole conversation thread about it. A wellness retreat for $3,200, including airfare, accommodation, meals, and something called holistic healing workshops. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to see what everyone else would say first, because surely someone would point out how absurd this was. And Dad, the same guy I'd pulled out of overdraft twice last year, the same guy whose mortgage I'd been supplementing for 18 months, replied, "Sounds like something you really need, sweetheart. Let's see what we can do." Mom added a heart emoji and wrote, "Whatever helps you heal, honey." That's when it hit me like a freight train. They didn't just think they could use me, they expected it. They thought the fund was communal property, like I was some kind of silent donor who existed just to make their problems disappear. They were discussing spending over $3,000 of my money like it was their money. I sat in my car outside the client's office, staring at my phone, feeling this rage building up that I'd never experienced before. This wasn't an emergency. This wasn't medical treatment or rent or food. This was a vacation, an expensive vacation that cost more than most people make in a month, being discussed casually like it was a reasonable use of emergency funds. But the real kicker came 2 nights before that group message. We had our monthly family video call, something Mom had insisted on during the pandemic that somehow became permanent. Usually, these calls were just everyone updating each other on their lives. But this one felt different from the start. I'd been excited to share some good news for once. I'd just landed this major client at work, a Fortune 500 company that wanted our firm to handle their entire digital transformation project. It was huge, career-defining huge, the kind of contract that would set me up for a promotion and finally give me some financial breathing room. "Guys, I've got some amazing news," I started, but Dad cut me off mid-sentence. "Sorry, son, can we circle back to Rebecca's housing situation first? She doesn't feel safe in her current place, and we really need to figure out next steps." Rebecca jumped in. "Yeah, there was another break-in in my building last week, and my landlord isn't doing anything about security. I've been having panic attacks every time I hear noise in the hallway." They wanted to move her to a better neighborhood. A much better neighborhood. We spent the next 45 minutes looking at apartment listings online, with everyone chiming in about granite countertops and in-unit laundry and gym access. Places that were $800 to $1,200 more per month than her current studio. When I finally managed to bring up my work news again, Mom said, "Oh, that's nice, honey," and immediately pivoted back to discussing Rebecca's moving timeline. That's when I said it, calmly, without raising my voice. "Maybe it's time someone else stepped up to help with this." The silence was ice cold. You could have heard a pin drop through the video call, like I'd said something offensive just by suggesting I shouldn't be the only one fixing everything. Mom jumped in first. "Honey, you know we would if we could, but you're the only one who's really stable right now." Stable. Another word for useful. Another way of saying the only one with money we can take. Rebecca started crying. Actual tears. "I can't believe you're making this about money when I'm talking about my safety. I thought family was supposed to support each other." Dad tried to play peacemaker. "Now, Rebecca, your brother has done a lot for us. But son, you have to understand. She's vulnerable right now. We can't just abandon her when she needs help. Abandon her. Like setting boundaries was abandonment. Like requiring other adults to solve their own problems was cruelty." I ended the call early that night, claiming I had work to catch up on. But I sat in my home office for hours afterward, staring at my financial spreadsheet. $87,421.13 over 5 years. Nearly $90,000 of my money. Given freely, no questions asked, no gratitude expected. And they thought I was being selfish for suggesting that maybe, just maybe, someone else could contribute something. 2 days later came that group message. "We think it's best if you step away for now." I realized later that the call had been a setup. They'd already decided to cut me out, probably so they could make financial decisions without my input. They wanted me gone so they could approve Rebecca's wellness retreat and figure out how to pay for her apartment upgrade without dealing with my negativity. What they didn't realize was that cutting me out meant cutting off the money too. In their minds, those were apparently 2 separate things. Chapter 5. The Reckoning. The fallout was immediate and absolutely brutal. Within 36 hours of closing the account, the overdraft notices started hitting like an avalanche. Mom's pharmacy called her Wednesday morning saying her prescription payment had been declined. The mortgage company called Dad at work, in front of his coworkers, asking about the failed automatic payment. Rebecca's landlord sent her a text about the bounced rent check with a photo of the NSF notice from his bank. But the phone calls to me were relentless. My phone was buzzing every few minutes with increasingly panicked messages. Mom called 17 times in 2 hours. Rebecca left this voicemail that started as a whisper and ended with her screaming, "Why would you do this? You knew I needed that payment by Sunday. My landlord is threatening eviction. You're going to make me homeless." The texts were even worse. Dad sent voice note after voice note like a man completely losing it. "Son, the mortgage bounced. The bank hit us with a $35 NSF fee, and now we're short for next month too. I thought you handled the insurance payment, but that bounced too. The car insurance lapsed, and now they're saying we need to pay double to reinstate it. What did you do to the utilities account? ComEd is saying we're 3 months behind, but I thought you were covering that. The bank locked our checking account. They said there were multiple red flags from all the failed transfers. You need to fix this right now. Fix this!" Like I had broken something instead of just stepping back like they explicitly asked me to do. The desperation in their voices was something I'd never heard before. For 5 years, I'd been quietly preventing these exact situations from happening. They'd never experienced the full weight of their financial choices because I'd always been there as a safety net. Now they were free-falling and suddenly realized how far up they'd been. Mom left this heartbreaking voicemail. "Honey, I don't understand what's happening. I went to pick up my insulin and they said the account was closed. I'm scared to eat anything because I don't have my medication. Please call me back, please. I raised you better than this." That last line was like a knife. I raised you better than this. Like basic financial boundaries were a moral failing on my part. They called a family Zoom meeting for Thursday evening, and the second I joined, I could see it was an ambush. Mom's face was pale and drawn. Dad was pacing behind her like a caged animal. Rebecca had tears streaming down her cheeks. Aunt Carol was there too, sitting ramrod straight in her pearls, looking like we were in family court. Even Uncle Jim was on the call, which never happened unless someone had died. "Why did you do this to us?" Rebecca started before I'd even gotten my camera on. "You just abandoned us after everything we've been through together. After everything we mean to each other." I took a breath and tried to stay calm. "You sent me a group message telling me to step away from the family. I'm respecting your wishes." "We didn't mean financially," Mom interjected. "We just thought you needed some space from Rebecca's drama. We never said anything about the money." "Actually," I replied, "you said I should step away from the family. The money was part of my involvement with the family. If you wanted me out of family decisions but still wanted my financial support, you should have been more specific." Dad jumped in. "Don't be ridiculous. You know what we meant." "No, I really don't. Because you made a group decision about me without including me in the conversation. You decided I was bad for Rebecca's mental health, bad for family dynamics, whatever. So I stepped away completely." That's when Rebecca really lost it. "Everything you've done for us? You mean after I paid your rent, funded your treatment, covered your emergencies, and got treated like garbage for saying no to your wellness retreat?" The room went quiet except for Rebecca's sobbing. "You act like we never appreciated you," Mom said quietly. "But we did. We do. Your family." "Really?" I said. "When's the last time any of you asked how I was doing? When's the last time anyone offered to help me with anything? When's the last time anyone even said thank you?" More silence. That's when I shared my screen and showed them the spreadsheet. 5 years of financial data, every payment, every bill, every emergency transfer tracked with obsessive detail. Monthly contributions, emergency payments, insurance premiums, medical bills, rent supplements, car repairs, legal fees, utilities, groceries, therapy copays, prescription costs. The running total, $87,421.13. Dead silence. I watched their faces as they processed the number. Dad's mouth was actually hanging open. Mom looked like she was going to be sick. Rebecca had stopped crying and was just staring at the screen. "You've been keeping tabs on us?" Mom said, horrified. "No," I replied. "I've been tracking my own expenses. I've been trying to understand why I can't afford to go on vacation, or buy myself decent furniture, or save for retirement. This is where my money has been going." Aunt Carol spoke up for the first time. $87,000? How is that possible? "Very easily," I said. $15,000 for Rebecca's treatment, $8,000 for Dad's mortgage supplements, $12,000 for Mom's medical expenses, $6,000 for Rebecca's apartment deposits and rent supplements, $5,000 for legal fees, $10,000 for car repairs and insurance. The list goes on and on. Dad tried the guilt trip. "We're family. Family helps family. You can't put a price tag on that." "You're right," I said. "Family helps family. But this hasn't been helping. It's been enabling. You've all made the same financial mistakes over and over because you knew I'd catch you when you fell. You never had to learn from consequences because there weren't any consequences. Rebecca found her voice again. So what? You're just going to let us lose everything? You're going to let Mom go without her medication? You're going to let me become homeless? I'm going to let you all handle your own problems like adults, I said. The same way I handle mine. But you don't have problems like ours, Mom protested. You have a good job. You're educated. You don't have mental health issues. I work 80 hours a week to afford my life and yours too, I interrupted. I haven't taken a vacation in 3 years. I live in a crappy apartment and eat ramen for dinner so I can pay your bills. You think I don't have stress? You think I don't have problems? The difference is, I solve them myself instead of calling someone else to fix them with money. The call ended with Rebecca sobbing, Mom saying I'd changed and that money had made me cold, and Dad promising they'd figure something out without me. Money hadn't made me cold. Being used had made me smart. I thought cutting them off would be the end of it, but it got worse. Way, way worse. 10 days after that Zoom call, I got an email from a random Gmail account with no subject line, just a bunch of screenshots attached. Rebecca's eviction notice, dated for the following week. Power company warnings for both my parents' house and Rebecca's apartment. Denied credit applications. Looks like they'd been trying to get loans, credit cards, anything to replace my financial support. They were falling apart fast, and somehow it was still my fault. The email was unsigned, but I'm pretty sure it was from Aunt Carol, based on the passive-aggressive tone of the file names What You Caused.jpg and This is what stepping away looks like .png. Then Mom showed up at my office on a Friday afternoon. I was in a client meeting when my assistant knocked on the door, looking uncomfortable. Your mother is here, she whispered. She says it's an emergency. Mom was sitting in the lobby looking like death warmed over, pale, shaking, clutching this manila envelope like it contained her last hope. She'd lost weight, her clothes were wrinkled, and she had this desperate look in her eyes that I'd never seen before. I didn't know where else to go, she said when I brought her into a conference room. Your dad's sleeping on the couch because we can't afford the electric bill and the house is freezing. Rebecca hasn't left her room in days because she's too ashamed to face her landlord. We've applied for assistance programs, but everything takes weeks, and we need help now. She opened the envelope and spread out a stack of bills like she was dealing cards. Past due notices, final warnings, disconnection threats. The total was staggering. Over $4,000 in immediate needs just to keep them from losing utilities and housing. Then she played her last card. I raised you. I gave you life. I changed your diapers, stayed up nights when you were sick, worked double shifts to pay for your school clothes. This is how you repay us? By watching us suffer when you could help? I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the audacity was breathtaking. You gave me life and then spent 30 years convincing me I owed you for it. You raised me to believe that family means sacrificing everything for people who won't sacrifice anything for you. That's not fair, she said, tears starting to flow. We would help you if we could. When? I interrupted. When have you ever helped me? When I was working 3 jobs to pay for college? When I was eating pasta every night so I could send you grocery money? When I haven't been on a date in 2 years because every spare dollar goes to your family emergencies? She didn't have an answer for that, but the real bombshell came a week later. I was at home on a Saturday morning, finally enjoying a leisurely breakfast for the first time in years, when a thick envelope arrived via certified mail. Bank letterhead marked Urgent Fraud Investigation. Inside were 20 pages of documentation about a business loan application that had been flagged by their fraud department. Someone had applied for $80,000 using my name, social security number, and the tax ID from the family fund account. The business was called Rebecca Grace Recovery Services, LLC, and according to the paperwork, it was a consulting company that provided mental health services to corporate clients. Complete fiction. The signature on the application looked like mine, but was just different enough that a handwriting expert would be able to spot it as a forgery. Mom and Dad were listed as co-signers, which meant they were directly involved in this scheme. If I hadn't closed that account when I did, the loan might have gone through. They'd apparently been planning this for weeks, maybe months. They weren't just using me. They were trying to frame me for a loan I never agreed to take. The whole stepping away from the family thing wasn't spontaneous hurt feelings. It was a calculated setup. Cut me from the fun discussions, but keep my name and social security number attached. Take the money, and let me deal with the legal and financial consequences. I spent that entire weekend filing reports with everyone I could think of. The bank's fraud department, the police, the IRS, the state attorney general's office, the credit reporting agencies. Every keystroke felt like therapy. Every form I filled out was another step toward protecting myself from people who were supposed to love me. The police detective assigned to the case was this older guy who looked like he'd seen everything twice. Family fraud is more common than you'd think, he told me during our first meeting. Usually it's parents stealing from kids, but sometimes it goes the other way. Adult children taking advantage of elderly parents. This situation, though, family members trying to use someone as a financial resource while simultaneously setting them up for fraud, that's a new one for me. He walked me through what would happen next. They'd investigate the loan application, interview everyone involved, possibly press charges depending on what they found. He advised me to freeze my credit, change my banking passwords, and document every interaction I'd had with my family regarding money. You did the right thing closing everything when you did, he said. If this loan had gone through, you'd be on the hook for $80,000 plus interest, and proving you didn't authorize it would have been a nightmare. When the investigators contacted my parents, Dad called me that evening crying, not apologizing, crying because they got caught. His voice was shaking as he tried to explain, "We were desperate, son. Really desperate. Rebecca was going to be homeless. Your mother was rationing her insulin. I thought I might lose the house. We thought if we could just get enough to stabilize everything, we'd find a way to pay it back before you ever found out. You thought you'd commit fraud in my name and I'd never find out?" I said, incredulous. "We didn't see it as fraud. We saw it as borrowing from family. You've always been there for us, and we figured this was just a more formal way of getting help." "A more formal way? You forged my signature on a loan application. You used my social security number without permission. That's not borrowing from family. That's identity theft." He was quiet for a long moment. "I know how it looks, but we never meant to hurt you. We were just trying to survive. By destroying my credit and potentially making me liable for a loan I didn't take? What if I hadn't caught this? What if the bank hadn't flagged it? I could have been ruined financially and never known why." That was the last conversation we had. Because what do you say to someone who thinks loving you means they're entitled to steal from you? It's been almost a year now since I closed that fund. Since the 3 a.m. phone calls and 89 missed voicemails. Since they tried to forge my name on an $80,000 loan application. And I can honestly say, I've never been happier. The first few months were rough, not gonna lie. I felt guilty constantly, second-guessing myself every day. I'd wake up wondering if Mom had been able to afford her medication, if Rebecca was sleeping in her car, if Dad had lost the house. The programming of 30 years doesn't just disappear overnight. Story 2. My brother ditched my 16-year-old daughter 1,200 miles from home to teach her respect. So I taught him what accountability looks like when I built a legal case that left him and his wife destroyed and cut from the family forever. Hey, Reddit, not really the type to post, but something happened a few months back that completely changed how I see family. I used to think blood automatically meant loyalty. Turns out it doesn't. What started as a simple family trip ended up showing me just how far people will go when jealousy eats them alive. I'm not here for pity. I just want to tell you how I handled it, step by step, the only way I know how, calmly, smartly, and without backing down. My daughter, Sarah, 16 female, had been buzzing about that family trip for weeks. She was smart, full of life, and honestly, too good for the circus that is my brother Mike's family. But she adored her cousins. She always did. She helped them pack, made matching bracelets, and even printed a little trip checklist for everyone. She told me, "Dad, this one's going to be the best one yet." I smiled, told her to take pictures, and reminded her to keep her phone charged. I couldn't go because of work. I'm a doctor, the kind who doesn't just clock out because a family wants matching beach shirts. Mike knew that. He promised to watch out for her like his own. I took his word for it. Big mistake. 3 days after they left, I was wrapping up a late shift at the hospital, one of those quiet hours where machines hum louder than people. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost ignored it, thinking it was another wrong call. But something in me said, "Pick up." The voice on the other end wasn't just crying. It was shaking. "Dad? Dad, it's me. It's Sarah." She was panicking so badly I could barely understand her. Between gasps, I made out pieces. Melissa took her phone to teach her respect. Her return flight got canceled, and everyone, Mike, Melissa, her cousins, had left. They'd gone home, without her. For a few seconds, I didn't say anything. My mind just stopped. Then everything clicked at once. Her being stranded, no phone, no family in a foreign country. "Where are you right now?" I asked, already typing into my computer. She sniffled. Outside the hotel. They kicked me out after checkout. They said my name wasn't on the room anymore. When I asked about my ticket, the front desk checked and told me my return flight had been canceled. I pressed the heel of my hand against my forehead. Okay, listen to me. You're not moving from where you are. Do you understand? Stay somewhere crowded. I'm getting you home. A man's voice came through faintly. Some tourist who had handed her his phone. She said the hotel staff let her stay at the lobby long enough to find someone willing to call me. She'd been trying all day. I kept my tone steady, but my chest was on fire. You're gonna be fine, Sarah. Just hang tight. I'm booking your flight right now. Within minutes, I had her on the next available flight home. I called the airline, arranged an airport escort for her, and sent them her photo and booking info. I've handled surgeries smoother than that call, but nothing has ever made my blood run colder. I informed the charge nurse I was leaving. Didn't wait for approval. Family emergency, I said. That was all. The drive to the airport felt longer than any shift I'd ever done. My brain replayed her voice, trembling and broken. I kept gripping the steering wheel tighter every time I thought about Melissa, about that smug, self-righteous tone she always had, the kind of person who thinks her cruelty is discipline. I thought about Mike, too. Spineless, probably nodding along to whatever she said. He'd always been that way. When we were kids, he'd lie, and I'd take the blame. Some people never outgrow cowardice. My phone pinged with flight updates every few minutes. I kept checking them like a man on autopilot. Heart pounding, but face calm. That's something medicine teaches you. Stay steady even when it burns inside. At one point, I actually laughed, bitter and low. The idea that they could do this and think I'd just let it slide. I'm not that guy. I've built my entire life fixing chaos. And this was personal. When I finally pulled into the airport parking lot, I killed the engine and sat there for a second, just breathing. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm. I opened my phone, looked at the last message Sarah had sent before they left. Don't work too hard, Dad. I'll bring you something cool. My jaw clenched. I walked inside, scanned the arrivals board, and checked the time. Her flight had just crossed the halfway mark on the tracker. I still had about 3 hours to wait. 3 hours for that anger to settle into something sharper. This wasn't just neglect. This was deliberate, calculated. And the moment I saw my daughter safe, I was going to make sure Mike and Melissa understood exactly who they had messed with. As I sat there in that dim waiting area, surrounded by the quiet hum of late-night travelers, I realized I wasn't even mad in the usual way. I was focused, cold, precise. They didn't just abandon my daughter. They made the mistake of assuming I was the kind of man who forgives family misunderstandings. I'm not. I looked at the sliding glass doors where the next wave of passengers would walk through. My hands tightened as I thought about what was coming. They left my kid alone in another country. That's not a mistake. That's cruelty. I kept replaying that line in my head as I stood in the arrival section. Every parent there was smiling, except me. I wasn't smiling. I was standing still, running through every possible outcome in my head like a checklist. Then I saw her. Sarah walked out of that gate like a ghost of herself, holding onto one small bag like her life depended on it. Her eyes scanned the crowd once, then she spotted me. The second she did, all that composure she'd been trying to hold together cracked. She ran into my arms and just clung there. Didn't say a word, just held on. I didn't ask anything. I just wrapped my arms around her and said, "You're safe now. I've got you." We walked out to the parking lot in silence. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't eaten or slept properly in days. I waited. I didn't push. I know how trauma works. You let the silence do the work first. Halfway down the highway, she spoke, her voice small. I tried to stay calm, Dad. I really did. What happened? She swallowed hard. It started the second we landed. Melissa kept saying I was too attached to my phone, that I should learn how to enjoy the trip instead of scrolling. So she took it for the week. I thought she'd give it back at night, but she didn't. Said she was teaching me discipline. I raised my eyebrow. But you were answering my texts whenever I did. Sarah frowned. That wasn't me. It was Melissa. She only gave me the phone whenever you called. I tightened my grip on the wheel. Melissa and her teaching moments. The woman's never taught anyone anything but arrogance. Sarah went on. Uncle Mike didn't say anything. He just nodded like she was right. He never says anything when she's being her. I didn't need her to finish that sentence. I'd seen it before. Melissa barking. Mike being a doormat standing behind her, pretending to keep peace while doing absolutely nothing. Sarah sniffed. At first, it was okay. The cousins were nice. We went to the beach, got ice cream. But then Melissa started picking at me. Said I was showing off because Grandpa always talks about me. She kept saying things like, some kids think being smart makes them better than everyone. I just ignored her. I could see it all in my head. The fake smiles, the quiet digs, the cousins watching awkwardly. I asked, why didn't you tell me? I didn't want to ruin the trip. I just kept quiet. That was Sarah, always the peacemaker, always trying to hold a family together that didn't deserve her effort. She took that from her late mother. She wiped her eyes and kept going. When it was time to leave, I started packing. Melissa came in and said my ticket got messed up. She said her assistant would fix it, so I waited in the lobby while they loaded the car. I thought they were just checking out. Then she told me to wait with the luggage because the van was full and Mike would come back for me after dropping them at the airport. And he didn't, I said quietly. She shook her head. No, he didn't. I waited for 3 hours. When I went back inside, the receptionist said the room was canceled and my name wasn't listed anymore. Then they said I had to leave because the booking was over. My jaw locked so tight I could hear it pop. I tried calling them, but Melissa had my phone, Sarah said. I tried calling my cousin Jessica from the hotel, but she didn't answer. Later, I found out Melissa told everyone I wanted to stay a few more days to be independent. She let out a broken laugh. Independent? I didn't even have anything. I sat outside for hours, and then the hotel security told me to leave. She looked down at her hands. A nice older lady saw me crying and let me use her phone to call you. That's the only reason I got through. For a moment, I didn't say anything. I just focused on breathing evenly. My mind wasn't thinking about emotions. It was cataloging. Melissa took the phone. Melissa canceled the flight. Mike approved it. The cousins were forced to stay quiet. It wasn't neglect. It was a plan. When we got home, I parked the car and turned to her. You did everything right, Sarah. You kept your cool. You stayed safe. I'm proud of you. She nodded, tears running down her face. I didn't want to bother you, Dad. You were working and... Stop. My tone came out sharper than I meant. You never have to apologize for needing me. Never. Inside, I made her food. Simple stuff, soup and toast. She picked at it while I asked small, calm questions. Times, names, phrases. Every detail mattered. I wrote it all down while pretending I was just making conversation. She told me how Melissa made comments the whole week about not having a real mom and getting special treatment because people feel sorry for her. I didn't react. Not yet. I just kept writing. I stood there for a long time, just watching her breathe. Then I went to my desk and opened my laptop. Started pulling up flight records, reservation emails, timestamps. Everything I could find. Melissa and Mike wanted to play games? Fine. I don't bluff. They treated her like she didn't matter, I muttered. Voice low but steady. They're about to find out she does. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because I couldn't, because I didn't want to. I've worked 24-hour shifts in trauma wards. I know how to run on focus alone. I sat at my desk with a cup of black coffee and my laptop, treating this like a patient case. Step 1, gather the facts. Step 2, confirm the source. Step 3, cut out the infection. First call, the airline. I gave them the booking reference from Sarah's old email. The rep on the other end sounded half asleep until I mentioned my daughter had been stranded abroad. Suddenly, she was wide awake. Yes, sir, I see the reservation here, she said, typing fast. Return ticket was canceled manually 4 days ago. By who? Looks like Melissa Grant. Same email as the original booking. My jaw tightened. Was a refund issued? Yes, to the same card that paid for the group booking. So she didn't just cancel it. She made sure the money went back to her. Second call, the hotel. I asked to speak to a manager. They confirmed Sarah's room was checked out at the family's request. I asked who made that request. The manager paused. Sir, Melissa Grant. She said your daughter had changed her travel plans. I thanked them and hung up. My screen was filling up with notes, timestamps, call logs. It was surgical work. Clean, unemotional, precise. Next, I dug into the booking chain. The family always used the same travel agent, a woman named Karen who handles Mike's business trips. I called her office. She picked up on the second ring, chipper as ever. Dr. Grant, how was the trip? I didn't go, I said flatly. But tell me, when you booked those tickets, who handled the changes? Her tone shifted fast. Oh, that would have been Melissa Grant. She emailed me midweek saying Sarah was going to stay longer. I kept my voice level. Did she now? And you didn't think to confirm that with me? She sounded confident, and the group booking was in her name. So I didn't think twice, Karen said. I thanked her, ended the call, and exhaled slowly. Every piece lined up perfectly. Melissa canceled the flight. She checked out the hotel room. She even contacted the travel agent to rewrite the story before I could find out. I started gathering evidence, screenshots of emails, the hotel invoice, and the airline's internal agent notes showing who canceled the ticket. I saved everything in a new folder labeled Case. Old habit, doctors like things organized when they plan to dissect something ugly. Around 9 a.m., my sister Jenny called. She's the only sibling I actually trust. Hey, you okay? I heard from Mom that Sarah had some travel issue. I told her everything. Short, clinical, no emotion. When I finished, she went silent. Oh my God, she finally said. Mom and Dad think Sarah stayed longer with friends. That's what Mike told them. Of course he did, I said. He probably rehearsed that lie while she was still sitting outside the hotel. Jenny was furious. Mom's gonna lose it when she finds out. She will, but not yet. I want every fact on paper first. While we talked, I kept working, copying the metadata from the booking emails, downloading the timestamps. Evidence doesn't lie, even when family does. After hanging up with Jenny, I called Mike. He picked up on the third ring, sounding relaxed, like he didn't have a single care in the world. Hey, bro! How's Sarah? Everything sorted? Yeah, I said. She's home. You want to tell me why she had to call me from another country using a stranger's phone? He chuckled, that fake nervous laugh he does when he's cornered. Don't exaggerate. She's fine, right? You left a 16-year-old stranded overseas with no phone and no return ticket. You better hope I'm exaggerating, Mike. He went quiet. Then, Melissa told me she had it under control. She said Sarah wanted to stay longer. Save it, I cut in. I've got the airline logs, hotel records, and travel agent emails. Melissa didn't have it under control. She had it planned. He tried another weak defense. You know how misunderstandings happen on trips. Maybe the system messed up. Yeah, I said dryly. Funny how the system always messes up in your wife's favor. He mumbled something about needing to talk to Melissa and hung up. I sat there for a minute, just staring at the call screen, then opened a new document titled Incident Report. I typed every word Sarah had told me, every quote from the calls, every timestamp. The more I wrote, the calmer I got. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't pacing. I was preparing. By the afternoon, I had a file thick enough to make anyone nervous. I saved copies to an encrypted drive and printed a few key pages. Then I texted my lawyer friend, Daniel, the kind of guy who's seen enough family lawsuits to keep emotion out of it. Need a favor, family matter, involves endangerment of a minor. Want to sue? Daniel replied, that bad? Worse. Sending documents now. I hit send on the folder and leaned back. The house was quiet except for the sound of the printer spitting out paper. For the first time since that phone call, I smiled. Not because it was funny, but because it was inevitable. Mike and Melissa wanted to act like Sarah didn't matter, like she was just some kid who'd get over it. They forgot who her father was. I picked up my phone, sent Daniel one last message. We're going legal. By the next morning, I had everything ready. Evidence doesn't lie, and I had enough to crush theirs. The timing worked out. It was Saturday, our family's usual get-together at my parents' house. Perfect stage. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I wanted them unprepared. When Sarah woke up, I told her, we're visiting Grandma and Grandpa today. You don't have to say anything. Just stay beside me. She hesitated. Are they going to be there? They are, I said, and they're going to answer for what they did. We drove in silence. I could see her fidgeting with her sleeve, nervous but trying to stay calm. She'd been through enough already, and I wasn't about to let her face another second of humiliation. The second we pulled into my parents' driveway, I spotted Mike's SUV. Of course. The man couldn't look guilty if he tried. Inside, my parents were at the table, Jenny was helping Mom set the plates, and Mike and Melissa were sitting like royalty, laughing at something. The moment I walked in, it was like the air got vacuumed out of the room. Mike's smile froze. Melissa blinked twice, then forced another one. Oh, you made it. Yeah, I said, dropping a thick folder on the table. Didn't want to miss family time. Mom's face lit up when she saw Sarah, but she could sense the tension instantly. Everything okay? She asked softly. Not yet, I said, but it will be. I sat down across from Mike and Melissa and opened the folder. Printed pages slid out. Flight confirmations, hotel checkout records, timestamps, and email chains. Melissa's name was on every one of them. What's all this? Mike asked, pretending confusion like he was reading a foreign language. This, I said evenly, is the paper trail proving my daughter's flight was canceled manually by your wife. Her hotel room was checked out early, also by your wife, and all of it was approved by you. Melissa gave a weak laugh. That's ridiculous. There must be some mix-up. Right, I said. A mix-up where your name shows up on every approval. Interesting coincidence? Mike leaned forward, palms up, fake calm. Look, we're sorry Sarah had travel issues, but you're blowing this out of proportion. It was chaos that morning. And don't, I said sharply. Don't insult my intelligence with that chaos excuse. You both left a 16-year-old girl in a foreign country. That's not chaos, that's neglect. Melissa crossed her arms. We thought she wanted to stay longer. She's always so independent. I leaned back, looking her dead in the eye. Really? Because the hotel manager says you told them she checked out with you. And the airline says you canceled her ticket. So unless Sarah hacked your email from another country, you're lying. The room went dead quiet. Jenny stopped setting the table and just stared. My mom had her hand over her mouth. Melissa's mask started to crack. Her lips tightened. Maybe if your daughter wasn't everyone's favorite, people wouldn't be tired of her. The words hung in the air like a slap. What did you just say? My father's voice cut through the silence. He stood up slowly, his face red. You left my granddaughter stranded because you were jealous? Melissa's jaw trembled. That's not what I... He slammed his hand on the table so hard the dishes rattled. Shut your mouth, Mom gasped. Jenny was frozen, eyes wide. Sarah, who'd been standing near the doorway, looked down, trying not to cry herself. I stayed seated, calm, because that's what power looks like. You know, I said slowly, I used to think people exaggerate about how petty jealousy can make someone. But this is a new level. You humiliated a kid because you couldn't handle her being loved. Mike tried to interject, Hey, don't talk to my wife like that. I cut him off. No, you don't get to defend her. You were supposed to be responsible for Sarah on that trip. You let it happen. You let her sit outside a hotel with no phone and no way home while you went sightseeing. You're her guardian, Mike, and you failed. He looked like he wanted to argue, but there was nothing left to say. His silence said it all. I stood up, collected the papers, and turned to my parents. I didn't come here for a fight. I came here to show you the truth. Then I looked at Mike. We're done. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Sarah walked to my side. We started toward the door, and I could hear Melissa sniffling behind us, trying to twist the story already. You're ruining this family, she cried. My father's voice followed me. No, he said, loud and final. You did. You're no daughter-in-law of mine. And Mike, he paused, voice low but firm. You're no son of mine. We left. The second the door closed behind us, Sarah exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for hours. Was that okay? She asked quietly. I nodded. You handled it perfectly. We got in the car. I called Daniel before even turning the ignition. It's done, I said. You have their reaction? He asked. Loud and clear. Good, he said. Then we moved forward. As I pulled out of the driveway, I caught one last glimpse of my father through the window, standing tall beside my mother, his face hard and set. For the first time in years, I saw the old man I grew up respecting, the one who didn't tolerate cruelty, no matter who it came from. I drove off without looking back. Whatever happened next wasn't family business anymore. It was legal business. 3 days later, the doorbell rang just after dinner. I checked the camera. Melissa, alone. The same woman who had strutted around like she owned the family now looked like she'd been chewed up and spit out. I opened the door halfway, just enough to make her uncomfortable. Can we talk? She asked, voice trembling. I crossed my arms. I don't think there's anything left to say. Please, she said, eyes darting like she was being chased. Just 5 minutes. I need to explain. I didn't answer. I just stepped aside without saying a word. Silence makes people panic faster than shouting. She walked in, clutching her bag like a shield. The moment she stepped into the living room, her whole act cracked. I messed up, okay? She blurted. I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. I sat on the edge of the couch, motionless. You canceled her ticket, took her phone, and left her in another country. That's not an accident. That's a choice. She started pacing. I just wanted her to stop acting like she's better than everyone. You have no idea what it's like. Everyone comparing my kids to your perfect daughter all the time. Grandpa this, grandma that. It's always Sarah's so polite. Sarah's so smart. Sarah's so mature. You think that doesn't hurt my kids? I tilted my head slightly. So your solution was to abandon her? Her breathing picked up. You don't get it. She doesn't even have a mom, yet everyone treats her like she's some miracle child. My kids have 2 parents, and nobody even notices them. That line hit harder than she expected. Not because it hurt me, because it exposed everything. The jealousy, the bitterness, the reason she did it. I stood up slowly, pulled my phone from my pocket, and placed it on the coffee table. Recording. Keep going, I said quietly. She didn't notice. She was spiraling. Mike said it was too much, that your daughter always gets the sympathy vote. Every family dinner, your dad brings her up like she's the only grandchild who matters. She dropped her bag on the floor, tears streaking her face. But it went too far. I thought maybe you'd get mad, yell at me, but I didn't think you'd... She stopped mid-sentence, realizing what she'd just admitted. I met her eyes. Didn't think I'd what? Expose you? Hold you accountable? Sue you? Her face drained of color. Then she saw my phone light blink red. Recording. Her voice broke into a scream. Are you recording me? Yep, I said flatly. I like keeping receipts. She lunged toward the phone, but I picked it up before she could touch it. You can't do this! You'll destroy my family! She cried. You already did, I said, calm as stone. She dropped to her knees, sobbing, hands clasped. Please, I didn't mean to hurt her. I was just angry. You don't know how it feels when everyone loves someone else's kid more than yours. You're right, I said. I don't know how it feels to be jealous of a child. That's because I'm not pathetic. She froze, tears still streaming, mouth open, but no sound coming out. Then, like flipping a switch, her sorrow turned to venom. You think you're perfect, don't you? Always the hero. If you weren't so smug, maybe people wouldn't hate you. This is your fault. You made me look bad. There it was. The real her again. The entitled, bitter woman who thought playing victim erased cruelty. I leaned forward. You left a kid stranded overseas. You ruined your own life. Don't ever show up at my door again. She stared at me, shaking, then stumbled to her feet and ran out. The door slammed so hard the frame rattled. I let out a slow breath, saved the recording, and labeled it Confession, Melissa. Then I sat down and listened to the first 30 seconds again, making sure every word was clear. It was perfect. My state is one-party consent, so the recording was admissible. That night, I sent the file to 2 people. Daniel, my lawyer, and my father. No explanation, just the audio clip and the subject line, proof. 15 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Dad. His voice was shaking, but not from sadness, from rage. Send me everything, he said. Every document, every recording, every message. I'll handle the rest. You sure? I asked. I've never been more sure of anything, he said. When the call ended, I knew 2 things. 1, Melissa wouldn't sleep again for a long time. And 2, I'd make sure her confession didn't just end up as gossip. It was going to be evidence. I wasn't the kind of man who yelled or threatened. I built cases. I gathered proof. I made things official. So when I said I'd make Melissa's confession into evidence, I meant it. By Monday morning, Daniel had already filed the civil lawsuit, negligence and emotional distress. It wasn't just family drama anymore. It was an official case with my daughter's name on it. Everything was documented. The canceled flight, the hotel checkout, the audio confession, the phone logs. Months later, when the case finally went to trial, the courtroom was quiet, formal, tense. The air in that room felt thick, like everyone knew something irreversible was about to happen. I sat next to Daniel while Melissa and Mike sat across from us, both pretending to be shocked this was even necessary. When the airline representative took the stand, I didn't look at them. I looked at the judge. The rep testified calmly, reading straight from their system. The return ticket for passenger Sarah Grant was canceled manually by Melissa Grant. The refund was processed to the same card used for the original payment. Melissa's eyes darted around the room, searching for someone to blame. Then the hotel manager spoke. The early checkout for the family suite was requested by Melissa Grant, he said. She told our staff the teenager in their group decided to stay behind with friends. We have her email confirming that statement. Daniel handed the printout to the judge. The sound of the paper sliding across the desk was louder than her entire defense. Mike tried to keep a straight face, but he looked ready to crumble. When it was his turn, Daniel didn't waste time. Mr. Grant, he said, did you approve the early checkout? Mike cleared his throat. I didn't know she canceled the ticket. I assumed everything was fine. Daniel didn't blink. So these emails with your signature, the ones approving the cancellations and hotel changes, weren't yours? Mike froze. He had no answer. Then came the part that broke whatever sympathy the room might have had left. The audio recording. Melissa's voice echoed through the speakers, clear and bitter. She doesn't even have a mom. Yet everyone treats her like she's special. My kids get nothing. You could feel the shift in the room. The judge's expression changed from neutral to disgusted. Melissa tried to fake a breakdown, covering her face with her hands, whispering, "That's not what I meant." I didn't say a word. I just sat there and watched her realize she'd built her own cage. Then my father took the stand. Grandpa looked tired but steady, the kind of quiet anger that shakes rooms. My granddaughter was abandoned by her own family, he said firmly. Melissa and Mike lied to all of us. We thought Sarah stayed with friends. They let us believe that while she was stranded in another country. That's not family. That's cruelty. Even the judge leaned back in her chair after that. When it was over, the judge ruled them liable. The court ordered damages for emotional distress and travel costs, plus full reimbursement of all legal fees. The judgment and findings were now part of the public record. The court described their conduct as neglect and emotional abuse. The gavel hit once, and it was done. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. It wasn't victory. It was confirmation. Outside the courtroom, Grandpa was waiting for me. He didn't say much, just handed me a folder and said, "The will's being rewritten. They're out." Over the next few days, the fallout spread like wildfire. Melissa's reputation in the neighborhood collapsed. Parents at the school stopped inviting her to events. The PTA quietly asked her to step down. Her name became synonymous with cruelty. People didn't even say it out loud anymore. They whispered it. Mike's job took a hit next. His company placed him on administrative leave pending an internal ethics review, citing public conduct unbecoming. He tried to play it off like a misunderstanding, but everyone knew what it was about. They thought they could bury what they did under excuses and fake tears. Instead, they buried themselves. I didn't gloat. I didn't post. I didn't even mention it again. I just went home, sat with Sarah, and helped her plan for the future. She was starting to smile again, starting to sleep through the night. We talked about college, art, travel, things that weren't tied to fear anymore. She asked me once, "Dad, do you feel better now that it's over?" I shook my head. This wasn't about feeling better. Revenge isn't what this is. It's correction. Because that's the thing about justice. When it's real, it doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be done. Months passed quietly after the trial. Life didn't snap back to normal, but it started moving in the right direction. Sarah went back to being her usual self, focused, funny, and sharp. She started volunteering at the hospital on weekends, helping kids with art projects while I worked nearby. Watching her walk down those same halls that used to see me at my most exhausted made something in me ease for the first time in a long time. She'd talk about studying psychology, said she wanted to help kids who don't get lucky parents. I never told her how much that line hit me. I just nodded and said, "You'd be good at that." The lawsuit finally wrapped up in full. The judge's written judgment landed like a hammer. Mike and Melissa Grant, liable for negligence and intentional infliction of emotional distress. It wasn't prison time, but it wasn't a slap on the wrist either. They were ordered into counseling, fined heavily, and restricted from any unsupervised travel with minors for 5 years. The judge made it clear in her final statement, this wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate act meant to humiliate and isolate a minor. Hearing those words printed on the record felt better than any apology ever could. After the judgment went public, the company finished its ethics review. The result was predictable: termination for professional misconduct. Just like that, his spotless business image evaporated. Meanwhile, the family lawyer finalized the will revisions. Mike and Melissa were formally disinherited. The new will was signed with witnesses present and filed immediately. Grandpa didn't just make it verbal. He made it official. If they want a family, he said, they can start their own. But he didn't punish the cousins. The kids weren't to blame. They were caught in the middle, and Grandpa made sure they stayed part of the family. They started spending weekends at his house, quiet visits, no mention of their parents. Sarah joined them sometimes, helping with homework or just hanging out. It was awkward at first, but kids adjust faster than adults. One night, I dropped her off there and watched from the car as she laughed with them on the porch. For a second, it almost looked like before. Not perfect, but peaceful. I got out and went inside to check on Grandpa. He was sitting at the kitchen table going through papers. "You look tired," I told him. He chuckled. "Tired's my new normal." Then he looked up and said, "I never thought I'd see the day my own son's name would be crossed off my will." "You did what you had to," I said. He nodded slowly. "So did you." The house felt lighter without Mike's voice in it, without Melissa's fake laughter filling the room. For once, family dinners didn't feel like walking through a minefield. Sarah handled the aftermath better than anyone. No bitterness, no revenge talk, just focus. She didn't even bring them up unless someone else did. When she got her acceptance letter for a summer psychology program, she said, "Maybe I can help kids who think no one listens." I told her, "You already do." Meanwhile, I stayed busy. Between hospital work, court paperwork, and helping Grandpa manage the trust funds for the cousins, I didn't have much time to think about the wreckage we left behind. But sometimes, when I drove past Mike's old office building or saw one of Melissa's old PTA friends in town pretending not to notice me, I couldn't help but think, good, actions have weight. One afternoon, Daniel called to say the case had been officially closed. It's over, he said. Good, I replied. Let's keep it that way. Later that evening, Sarah joined me in the living room. She sat down next to me and said, You didn't just protect me, you made them answer for it. I glanced at her, half smiling. That's what family's supposed to do. She leaned her head on my shoulder. We're a pretty good team, huh? The best, I said. The world outside kept moving. New cases at work, new routines, new normal. The name Mike and Melissa Grant eventually faded into whispers. But inside our small world, the balance was restored. You can't choose your blood, but you can choose who stays in your family. And mine? It finally felt clean again. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 3. I found out my parents had transferred the family metal shop to my brother. So I quit working 80 hours a week for free. A week later, Dad called in panic. Our biggest client is about to leave. I answered calmly, let the air handle it. All right, Reddit. I spent a decade working in my family's metal shop. No paycheck, just room and board, and vague promises about building equity. Then I found the succession plan tucked behind some files. My parents were handing everything to my younger brother who can't even deal with the machines. So I walked away. Now that they're in trouble, they're begging me to come back. Here's what went down. I'm Owen, 32 male. 10 years of my life disappeared into that shop in Green Bay, Wisconsin. The industrial zone near the bay where everything smells like cutting fluid and burnt metal. That's where I spent my 20s, working myself into the ground for a business I thought would eventually be mine. I started right after finishing trade school. My grandfather founded the place in 1978, started with one CNC machine and a dream. By the time I came aboard, we had 6 CNC mills, 3 lathes, a full welding setup, and contracts with half the manufacturing plants in northeastern Wisconsin. I worked 80-hour weeks. Not an exaggeration. I'd show up at 5 in the morning to prep machines, load programs, get the first run going. Spent my days operating CNCS, TIG welding custom brackets, programming tool paths, dealing with suppliers, and managing clients who needed impossible tolerances on parts they designed wrong. I'd leave around 9 or 10 at night, sometimes later if we had a rush order. My hands were permanently stained with cutting oil. I had scars from metal shavings and burns from welding spatter. My back was shot from lifting steel plates, and my hearing was half gone from machine noise. My social life was non-existent. Friends stopped inviting me out after the 50th time I said I couldn't make it. Dating was a joke. Can't exactly maintain a relationship when you're married to a milling machine. But I kept going because I thought I was building my future. My parents said all the right things. This is our family legacy. You're investing in yourself. One day this will all pay off for you. I ate it up like an idiot. Here's the thing. There's always a favorite kid. And brother, I wasn't it. My brother Mason is 3 years younger than me. 29 now. He'd roll in around 10:30, grab coffee from the fancy machine my parents bought for the office, spend an hour scrolling through his phone, maybe answer an email or two, then disappear for a 2-hour lunch. He'd come back around 3, hang out in the climate-controlled office, then bounce by 4:30. His contribution? Attending the occasional client meeting where I'd already done all the technical work, taking credit for projects I designed and fabricated, posting on the company's Instagram with captions like, another successful build by our team, while standing next to parts I'd made. And get this, my parents paid him a salary, 45 grand a year for part-time Instagram modeling. Meanwhile, I got room and board at my parents' house. No cash, no health insurance, no 401k, just a bedroom and whatever leftovers were in the fridge. Mason drove a newish truck. My parents bought it for him because he needed reliable transportation for client meetings. I drove a 20-year-old beater that burned oil and had a check engine light on since 2008. But I didn't complain. I kept my head down and worked. I figured actions spoke louder than words. I thought if I just kept proving myself, eventually my parents would see my value. Nope. Turns out I was building someone else's kingdom. Last month, everything changed. I was in the office around midnight finishing paperwork for a big medical device contract. We just delivered 200 custom titanium components with tolerances tighter than anything we'd done before. I was filing the quality control documents when I noticed an envelope tucked behind some old binders. Had a red confidential stamp across the front. I handled most of the shop's administrative stuff. Seeing something marked confidential that I'd never seen before set off alarm bells. I opened it. Inside was a succession plan dated 4 months earlier, legal documents, transfer of ownership papers. My parents were transferring 100% ownership of the business to Mason. My name didn't appear anywhere except on the employee roster. Yeah, employee roster. 10 years of my life, 80-hour weeks, thousands of parts fabricated, millions in contracts I'd landed. And according to these papers, I was nothing, just labor. I stood there reading it over and over. The shop was quiet except for the hum of the dehumidifier. The anger came first, that burning feeling in your chest when you realize you've been played. Then came the sadness, when you understand your own parents looked at everything you did and decided it wasn't worth anything. I thought about all those mornings I dragged myself out of bed at 4:30, all the weekends I spent in the shop while everyone else was at Lambeau Field, the friends who stopped calling, the relationships that never happened, the life I'd given up, the sacrifices. And they decided Mason deserved it. Mason, who couldn't program a CNC to save his life. Mason, who didn't know the difference between 6061 and 7075 aluminum. The guy who'd probably never spent more than 30 hours in the shop in any given week. I took the documents home, didn't sleep, just sat in my room staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment. Around 3 in the morning, I made a decision. I was done. The next morning, I got up at my usual time, drove to the shop like always, but instead of starting the machines, I sat down in the office and wrote out my resignation on the company letterhead. I quit. Good luck running this place without me. You're going to need it. I left the letter on my dad's desk, grabbed my personal tools, my grandfather's old welding helmet that he'd given me when I started, and a photo of him and me from my first week. Then I walked out, drove away while the sun was coming up over the bay. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't have to be anywhere at 5 in the morning, didn't have to answer to anyone. It felt terrifying and liberating at the same time. I crashed at my buddy Adam's place. He had a couch and didn't ask too many questions. I spent my time trying to figure out what to do next. At 32 with no real savings and a decade of unpaid labor, my options felt limited. Then exactly 8 days after I quit, my phone rang. My dad. His voice sounded strained, almost panicked. "Owen, are you serious? Where have you gone? We need you back right now. The Precision Dynamics account. They're threatening to pull out. They're saying quality's dropped and nobody's responding to their technical questions. We can't afford to lose them." Precision Dynamics, our biggest client, medical device manufacturer. They accounted for about 40% of our revenue. High tolerance work, complex parts, demanding specs. I'd built that relationship over 4 years. I let the silence sit for a moment. A week ago, I would have rushed back to fix everything, but not anymore. "Let Mason handle it," I said calmly. "He's the owner now, right? I'm sure he'll figure it out." I hung up before he could respond. My heart was pounding, but I didn't feel guilty. But hanging up on my dad wasn't the end of it. It was just the beginning. My phone blew up after that call. My mom. My dad again. Text messages from Mason that started with, "What's your problem?" and escalated to, "You're going to regret this." I ignored all of them. Adam walked into the living room. "Everything good, man?" "Yeah. Just my family realizing they can't run their business without me." "About time you walked away from that situation," he said. "I've been watching you kill yourself for that shop for years." "For what?" "Nothing." Adam was a union electrician, made good money, had benefits, worked his 40 hours, and went home. He'd been telling me for years I was getting screwed. 3 days later, I was getting food at this little diner on the east side when I saw my parents walk in. My mom spotted me first. Her face went through about 5 different emotions. Surprise, anger, something that might have been guilt, then just cold. They walked over to my booth. My dad stayed standing. Tried to loom over me like that would intimidate me back into line. "We need to talk," he said. "Not really," I replied, focusing on my eggs. "You're being childish, Owen. The business needs you. Your family needs you." Funny. The succession plan didn't mention anything about me being needed. Just said Mason gets everything. My mom jumped in. "You weren't supposed to see that yet. We were going to discuss it with you properly." "But when? After another 5 years of free labor?" "You lived in our house," my dad said. "Rent-free. We fed you. That's not nothing. I worked 80 hours a week for 10 years. I brought in Precision Dynamics. I landed the contracts with Badger Manufacturing and Superior Components. I designed the custom jigs that increased our efficiency by 30%. I trained every new employee. And you think room and board covers that? Other people in the diner were starting to look over. My dad's face was turning red. Mason is your brother, my mom said. He needs the stability more than you. You're capable. You can make it on your own. He needs structure. Yeah, that's the problem, I interrupted. You handed him everything, including 10 years of my work. My dad leaned in closer. If you don't come back, the business will fail. Is that what you want? To destroy your grandfather's legacy out of spite? That one almost got to me. But then I thought about Mason posting Instagram stories from Lambeau Field while I was working overtime. Thought about him driving that new truck while I scraped together gas money. No, I said. You did that when you decided I wasn't worth including in the future of a business I built. Now, if you'll excuse me, my eggs are getting cold. They stood there for another few seconds. My mom looked like she wanted to say something else, but my dad grabbed her arm and pulled her away. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about my grandfather. He'd built that shop from nothing. He used to tell me stories about the early days. How he saved up to buy that first CNC machine. How he built relationships with clients based on quality and trust. He'd had a journal. I remembered seeing it years ago when I was helping organize the attic. Never really looked at it closely, but now I was curious. I drove back to my parents' house at 2 in the morning, parked down the street, snuck into the detached garage where they stored old stuff, found the boxes from the attic. It took me an hour, but I found the journal. Leather cover, pages yellowed with age, my grandfather's handwriting. I sat in my truck with a flashlight reading page after page. He documented everything. The struggles of starting out, his philosophy on business, his thoughts on family and legacy. Then I found something that made me stop breathing. Tucked between 2 pages was a handwritten agreement dated 1991. The language was clear. This business belongs to those who build it. Anyone who gives their sweat and skill to keep this shop running deserves to share in its success. No one should claim another man's work as their own. My grandfather had wanted equity, fairness. He'd wanted the business to go to whoever actually did the work, not just whoever happened to be the favorite. I took photos of every page with my phone. This changed everything. The next morning, I called a lawyer. The lawyer's name was Eric. Young guy, maybe 35, ran a small practice in Howard. Adam's cousin had used him for a contract dispute and said he was good. I walked into his office carrying my grandfather's journal and a folder of documents I'd printed out. He went through everything methodically. After about 90 minutes, he looked up at me. This agreement from your grandfather, he said, tapping the journal. It's not a formal legal document, but it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with your documented contributions, we might have a case. Might? We need to prove 3 things. First, that you were the primary driver of the business's success. Second, that the current succession plan violates your grandfather's documented wishes. Third, that your brother is unfit to run the company. The third part won't be hard, I said. Eric smiled. We need evidence, though. Everything you can get. Customer testimonials, financial records, proof that the business depended on you specifically. I might have something there, I said. I spent the next week gathering evidence like my life depended on it. Went through old emails I'd saved. Found messages from clients praising my work specifically. One from the precision dynamics engineer. Owen, your attention to detail on these parts is why we keep coming back. You understand our specs better than anyone. Another from Badger Manufacturing. We tried 3 other shops before finding you guys. Owen's technical knowledge solved problems our own engineers couldn't figure out. I made spreadsheets showing the business's growth over my 10 years versus the previous decade. Revenue nearly tripled. Client retention went from 60% to 92%. We'd expanded into medical device manufacturing, aerospace components, and precision automotive parts. All sectors I'd broken into. Then I dug into the financial records. I still had access to old bank statements I'd saved on a thumb drive. Started going through Mason's company card charges. What I found was impressive. I mean impressively criminal. Mason had been using the company card like his personal ATM. Charges at Kohl's, Best Buy, restaurants nowhere near our clients. Season tickets to Packers games marked as client entertainment, even though we had email records showing those clients didn't attend. A 5-day trip to Door County charged as a business conference during a week when no industry conferences were happening. My favorite was a $4,000 home theater system delivered to his apartment, listed as office equipment. I organized everything, made copies, took everything to Eric. He whistled when he saw the financial evidence. This is significant, Owen. This is about fiduciary responsibility. If we can prove your brother misused company funds, it strengthens our argument that he's unfit to own the business. Over the next few weeks, I kept building the case. Eric wanted more proof that my departure was impacting the business. I called some former coworkers. There was this woman named Caroline. She ran quality control. We'd worked together for 7 years. Owen, honest to God, it's chaos without you, she said. Mason's trying to run jobs he doesn't understand. Last week he programmed a mill wrong and wrecked a $50,000 titanium workpiece. Your dad lost his mind. We're 3 weeks behind on the precision dynamics order, and they're threatening to leave. Would you be willing to document that? Absolutely. I got similar responses from 2 other employees. They all agreed to provide written statements. Then I got a call that changed everything. Frank Palmer. He was my grandfather's best friend and the shop's first employee. Retired 5 years ago, but still lived in Green Bay. Owen, I heard what's happening with your folks in the business. Yeah, it's a mess, Frank. Your grandfather would be ashamed of them. He specifically told me he wanted that shop to go to whoever put in the work. That was his whole philosophy. He wrote that down, actually, in his journal. I found it. Good. That journal has weight. Listen, I have something that might help you. Frank lived in a small house near the airport. I drove over that afternoon. He was waiting on his porch. He led me inside to his garage workshop. Been cleaning out old stuff. Found these. He handed me a box of photographs. Photos from the shop's early days. My grandfather operating that first CNC machine. Then photos from throughout the years, including dozens from my time there. Your grandfather took these himself, Frank said. You'll notice something about these photos from your years. I looked through them. Photo after photo showed me working, operating machines, welding, programming, meeting with clients. In a lot of them, my grandfather was in the background, watching me work with this proud expression. He knew you were the one, Frank said. Told me multiple times. Frank, he'd say. Owen's got it. He's got the work ethic, the skill, the dedication. I felt a lump in my throat. Why didn't he put it in writing then? Make it official? He did. Or he tried. He was working on updated succession documents right before he died. Had an appointment with his lawyer scheduled. But the heart attack got him first. Your parents must have pushed through their own plan after. Frank pulled out one more thing. An old file folder. These are contracts your grandfather signed, going back 30 years. Look at the language in the early ones versus the later ones. I looked through the contracts. Frank was right. The progression was clear. My grandfather had been building towards something more equitable. Eric nearly jumped out of his chair when I showed him the new evidence. This is exactly what we needed. The photos establish a clear pattern. Your grandfather's noted intentions, supported by his friend's testimony, give weight to the journal entry. We're not just arguing about inheritance anymore. We're arguing about honoring a founder's documented wishes. He laid out the plan. We'd file a lawsuit to invalidate the succession plan based on my grandfather's agreement. We'd argue I was the rightful heir based on my contributions. And we'd use Mason's financial mismanagement as evidence he shouldn't be in charge. But Owen, I need you to understand something, Eric said. This is going to get ugly. Your family will fight back. They'll try to paint you as greedy or vindictive. Are you ready for that? I thought about it for seconds. 10 years of my life. 80-hour weeks. No pay, no recognition. Yeah, I was ready. Let's do it, I said. He filed the lawsuit 2 days later. It laid out everything. My grandfather's journal and documented philosophy. Frank's testimony. My 10 years of contributions. The financial records showing Mason's misuse of funds. Photos spanning a decade. We weren't messing around. My parents got served 3 days after we filed. Then Mason. My phone started blowing up again. Texts from my mom. Voicemails from my dad. Mason sent me a message calling me every name in the book. I blocked his number and kept moving forward. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I couldn't sleep. Spent my nights at Adam's place gaming or watching movies, trying to distract myself. The shop was falling apart without me. I heard about it through Caroline, who'd text me updates. Mason tried to run the new aerospace job today. Messed up the tool offsets and scrapped 3 parts. Customers furious. Your dad hired some guy to replace you. He quit after 2 days. Said Mason was impossible to work with. Precision Dynamics officially pulled their account. They're going with Milwaukee Precision Manufacturing instead. Each message was vindicating, but also painful. That shop was my grandfather's legacy. Watching them destroy it hurt more than I expected. One afternoon, I was at the Quick Trip getting coffee when I ran into Mason. He was getting energy drinks. He saw me and his face twisted into something ugly. "This is all your fault," he said loud enough that other customers looked over. "How do you figure? The business is falling apart because you're too much of a baby to handle not being the favorite son." I laughed. Couldn't help it. "Mason, you couldn't program a CNC if your life depended on it. The business is falling apart because you're incompetent, not because I left. His face went red. I'm running that shop just fine. You lost Precision Dynamics. They were 40% of our revenue. How's that fine? We'll find other clients. With what quality? You scrapped 3 aerospace parts yesterday because you can't set up a job correctly. He stepped closer, tried to get in my face. You're going to lose this lawsuit. Then you'll come crawling back, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what a loser you are. Good talk, Mason. I walked past him. No point engaging with someone who couldn't see reality. 2 days before the hearing, Frank called me. Owen, I found something else. Was going through more of your grandfather's old files. He kept records of who worked on what projects. And made a spreadsheet. For every major project over the last 10 years, I noted who the primary operator was. Want to guess the result? I'm hoping it's good news. 93% of projects. You were the primary or sole operator on 93% of jobs over the past decade. Can you testify to that? Already told your lawyer I'm available. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep at all. Just lay on Adam's couch staring at the ceiling. The courthouse in Green Bay was this old building downtown. I got there an hour early. Sat in my truck in the parking lot, watching the bay through the buildings. Eric showed up. We went over everything one more time. Your family's lawyer is going to try to paint you as bitter. Don't give them ammunition. Be professional. My parents and Mason arrived right before the hearing started. They had some lawyer from Milwaukee with them. We all filed into the courtroom. The judge was this older woman, maybe 60, with short gray hair and reading glasses. Judge Denise Porter. She looked stern, but fair. The hearing started. Eric went first. He presented everything. My grandfather's journal, Frank's testimony about my grandfather's intentions, and the statistical breakdown. The photos, client testimonials, employee statements. Then he showed the financial evidence. Mason's company card charges. $75,000 in personal expenses over 3 years. Every receipt blown up on the screen. The courtroom went quiet. Your Honor, these expenses were charged to company accounts with no legitimate business purpose, Eric said. Personal electronics, entertainment, travel unrelated to any business activity. Back and forth it went. Every charge their lawyer tried to justify. Eric dismantled each justification with documentation. Then came testimony. I went first. Eric asked about my history with the business, my relationship with my grandfather, my contributions. I believed I was building something, I said. I thought my work mattered. When I found the succession plan, it felt like my entire adult life had been a lie. Their lawyer cross-examined me, tried to make it seem like I was just angry. I was 22 when I started, I said. I trusted my parents. They said I was building equity, that this was a family business and we'd all benefit. I didn't think I needed a contract with my own family. But you never asked for ownership documents? No, because I trusted them. The judge made a note. Frank testified next. Talked about working with my grandfather for 30 years. About how my grandfather valued hard work and fairness. Owen's grandfather told me directly, multiple times, that Owen was the future of that shop. Mason took the stand after that. Their lawyer asked softball questions. I've been modernizing our approach, Mason said. Building our online presence. Developing strategic partnerships. Eric's cross-examination was brutal. Can you name 3 clients you've personally brought to the company? Mason hesitated. I've been working on several prospects. Names? I don't have them memorized right now. Can you describe the setup process for a CNC mill? Another hesitation. That's what our operators do. You're claiming you're fit to run a metal fabrication shop, but you don't know how to set up the primary equipment? I handle the business side. What was last quarter's revenue? I'd have to check the records. You don't know basic information about the business you're claiming to be fit to own? Mason got defensive, started making excuses, said he delegated technical details. High-level strategy that resulted in losing 40% of the company's revenue within 3 weeks of the primary operator leaving. That was sabotage. How is leaving a job sabotage? Did my client sign a contract forcing him to work there? Mason didn't have an answer. The judge called a recess. Eric pulled me aside. That went well. Your brother's testimony helped us more than hurt us. When we reconvened, the judge looked at both sides. I'm going to take 3 days to review all evidence and testimonies. I'll issue a ruling by Friday. Court is adjourned. 3 days. 72 hours to find out if 10 years of my life meant anything or nothing. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything. Caroline kept texting me updates from the shop. Your dad hasn't been in for 2 days. Your mom's running around trying to manage things. She doesn't know what she's doing. Mason came in this morning, lasted an hour, left after the Badger manufacturing rep showed up. Another employee quit, said he's not staying if Mason's in charge. The business was in free fall. Part of me felt vindicated, but another part felt sad. My grandfather had built something real, and they were destroying it through incompetence. Friday morning arrived. Eric called me at 7. Be at the courthouse by 9. Judge Porter is ready to rule. I got there early. Then Adam showed up. Thought you might want some backup. You didn't have to come. Yeah, I did. You're my friend. We walked into the courthouse together. My parents and Mason were already there with their lawyer. They looked tired, stressed. My mom had been crying. Frank showed up right before we went in, gave me a firm handshake. Your grandfather would be proud, Owen, no matter what happens in there. We filed into the courtroom. Judge Porter came in carrying a stack of papers. Her face was unreadable. I've reviewed all evidence and testimonies presented in this case, she began. This involves complex questions of family business succession, founder intent, and fiduciary responsibility. My heart was hammering. The plaintiff's grandfather clearly documented his philosophy about business ownership. While his journal entry is not a formal legal document, it establishes clear founder intent. Combined with testimony from the founder's longtime associate and documented progression toward employee ownership, the founder's wishes are evident. She paused. The evidence of the plaintiff's contributions is overwhelming. Client testimonials consistently credit him specifically. Employee statements confirm his role as the primary operator. Statistical analysis shows he was responsible for 93% of production over the past decade. His departure resulted in immediate operational collapse. These demonstrate that the plaintiff was the functional operator and driver of business success. I felt hope starting to build. Regarding the defendant's fitness to run the business, I find the evidence deeply concerning. Mason's face was red. My mom was panicking. Therefore, I am ruling in favor of the plaintiff. The succession plan transferring 100% ownership to the defendant is invalidated as contrary to documented founder intent and inequitable given the plaintiff's contributions. I couldn't breathe. However, given the current state of the business, including significant debt, operational deterioration, and loss of major clients, I am ordering the business to be sold. Proceeds will be divided equally between both children after debts and the defendant's improper expenses are settled. The gavel came down. I'd won. We filed out in silence. My parents left quickly. Mason shot me one last hateful look, then stormed off. Eric shook my hand. Congratulations, Owen. That's about as clear a victory as you could hope for. What happens now? The business gets appraised and put on the market. Could take a few months. After Mason reimburses those expenses and debts are covered, you're probably looking at somewhere around $50,000 to $70,000. Not life-changing money, but enough to start over. Adam and I went to a diner afterward, had coffee at 11 in the morning. How do you feel? Adam asked. I don't know. Relieved, sad, angry, all of it. You did the right thing. Yeah, but it cost me my family. They cost themselves your family when they decided to use you for 10 years. Don't forget that. He was right, but it still hurt. The business sold 6 weeks later. Some manufacturing company from Milwaukee bought it, mostly for the client list and equipment. They kept Caroline and a couple other employees. My parents and Mason lost money once all the debts were calculated. My share after everything was settled came to $63,000. Not a fortune, but enough to start fresh. I started looking at commercial real estate around Green Bay. Found a small space in Ashwaubenon, about 1,200 square feet. Concrete floors, roll-up door, decent power, perfect for a small fabrication shop. Signed a lease, bought some used equipment. Spent about half my money on equipment and the lease deposit. I named the shop Palmer Precision, after my grandfather. Felt right. The first few weeks were just setup. Getting equipment installed and calibrated, building a basic website, getting licensed and insured. Then I started making parts. Small stuff at first. Posted on social media. Let people know I was open for business. The response surprised me. A contractor called about custom brackets. A boat shop needed stainless steel fittings. A gym wanted custom weight equipment. Small jobs, but they added up. Word spread. People remembered my work. 3 weeks in, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Owen, this is Wayne from Precision Dynamics. My heart rate picked up. Wayne was their senior engineer. The guy I'd worked with for 4 years. Wayne, how's it going? Good. Listen, I heard you started your own shop. We're not happy with Milwaukee Precision. You interested in doing work for us again? Absolutely. That order became my first major contract. I worked 18-hour days building those parts. Every dimension perfect. Delivered them 2 days early. Wayne called the day after they received the order. This is exactly what we needed. Let's talk about bringing you back as our primary vendor. Just like that, I had my anchor client back. I hired Caroline 2 months after opening. The Milwaukee company had let her go when they restructured. I know you're small, she said, but I'd rather work for someone who knows what he's doing. I can't match what you were making yet, but I can offer a percentage of profits once we're established. Deal. Having Caroline changed everything. She handled quality control and secondary operations, freed me up to program and run the CNC, take on more complex jobs. We worked in sync. The business grew steadily. More clients. Better projects. I wasn't getting rich, but I was making enough to live on and reinvest. Most importantly, I was building something that was actually mine. I saw my parents once after the verdict, ran into them at Festival Foods about 5 months later. We passed each other in the aisle. My mom looked away immediately. My dad nodded slightly but didn't speak. I nodded back and kept walking. There wasn't anything to say. Mason, I heard through town gossip, moved to Milwaukee. Couldn't handle everyone in Green Bay knowing what he'd done. Last I heard, he was working retail. One afternoon, about 8 months after opening, a woman came into the shop. Mid-30s, carrying blueprints. Are you Owen? That's me. I'm Nicole. I'm opening a coffee roastery in Des Peres. Need custom stainless steel equipment and fittings. Someone told me you do quality work. We talked for an hour about her project. She was passionate about what she was building. I can do it, I said. When do you need delivery? 2 months? I did the job. Built everything to spec. Delivered on time. She was thrilled. Sent me photos of her roastery's opening day. Nicole started stopping by the shop sometimes. Brought samples of whatever coffee blend she was roasting. We'd talk about running small businesses, about the struggles and victories. Eventually, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner. Talk about maybe doing more work together. First real date I'd had in over 10 years. It's been 18 months now since I left the family business. Palmer Precision is doing well. Steady income, growing client base, good reputation. I work hard, but it's different now. I take days off. I see friends. I have an actual life. Nicole and I are still together. Her roastery is thriving. Sometimes we talk about our futures, about what we're building together. It's nice having someone who understands what it's like to build something from scratch. My relationship with my parents is basically non-existent. We don't talk, don't see each other. Part of me wishes it could be different, but a bigger part of me knows they made their choice. I think about my grandfather often, wonder what he'd think about all this. Sometimes I pull out his journal and read his entries. Late at night in my workshop, I feel his presence. Like he's there with me, nodding approval. This workshop isn't his factory. It's smaller, newer, but it's mine, built by my hands. Nobody can take that from me. 18 months turned into 2 years, then 2.5. Palmer Precision kept growing. I hired 2 more people, a kid named Corey, fresh out of tech school, who reminded me of myself at that age, and Tommy, a retired machinist who got bored of retirement. We were a solid crew. The shop wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. Then one Tuesday morning, I got this bomb. I was programming a toolpath when my phone rang. Unknown number. Owen Palmer? Speaking. This is Andrew Harlan. I'm the owner of Harlan Manufacturing. We bought your family's old shop about 2 years ago. I felt a weird twist in my stomach. Okay, I'll be direct. We're shutting down that facility. It's been nothing but problems since we bought it, but I've been hearing good things about your operation. I wanted to see if you'd be interested in acquiring some equipment before we auction everything off. What kind of equipment? There's a newer CNC lathe, barely used. Some welding equipment. A few jigs and fixtures. I know you probably have history with the place. Thought I'd give you first option. I drove over that afternoon. The shop looked different, emptier, but there was equipment still there, including my grandfather's original CNC mill from the 80s. I'd learned on that machine, spent hundreds of hours running parts while my grandfather watched and coached. It was obsolete by modern standards, but seeing it sitting there hit different. That old mill, I said to Andrew, it's not on your list to sell. That dinosaur? It's not even worth the cost to haul it away. We were going to scrap it. I'll take it. And the lathe. And those fixtures over there. We worked out a deal. He practically gave me everything. I had everything hauled to Palmer Precision. The new lathe went into production immediately. But the old CNC mill, my grandfather's machine, I set that up in a corner. Restored it over a few weeks. Got it running smooth. Didn't plan to use it for production. Too slow for modern work. But I wanted it operational. I wanted it in my shop. A physical connection to my grandfather. Frank came by the day I finished restoring it. He walked up to the old machine and ran his hand over it like he was greeting an old friend. "Haven't seen this beauty in years," he said. "Your grandfather was so proud when he bought this. He spent months learning how to program it. I learned on this machine." Frank turned to look at the rest of my shop. "He'd be proud of this, Owen. Really proud. 3 years ago, I was working 80-hour weeks for nothing. Living in my parents' house, no money, no life, no future that was actually mine. Now I owned a business, had a relationship, had a life worth living. The lawsuit didn't just get me money. It got me freedom." YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Story 4. They demanded that my new house be big enough to comfortably fit my Golden Brothers family. Because apparently, my success should benefit them first. So I made a quiet purchase. They knew nothing about. The day they showed up, I heard screaming from the driveway. "How the hell are we supposed to fit in this?" Some people say blood is thicker than water, but I learned early that favoritism runs thicker than both. I 34 male live in Denver. Not bad for a kid who grew up being told he was too independent for his own good. But let me rewind to where this all started. The day my brother Tyler was born when I was 4. From that moment on, I might as well have been invisible, unless they needed something from me. Tyler's always been what you'd call a natural charmer. 3 years younger, good-looking in that effortless way that gets you through life without trying, and blessed with the kind of confidence that only comes from never hearing the word no. Our parents, Linda and Rick, treated him like he was made of gold from day one. I remember being 11 and saving up for months from my paper route to buy this remote control helicopter I'd been wanting. Cost me $89. A fortune for a kid. Tyler saw it, decided he wanted one too, and boom. Mom and Dad bought him the deluxe version for $300 the next day. When I asked why I had to save for months while Tyler got his instantly, Dad just shrugged and said, "Tyler's going through a tough time at school. He needed something to cheer him up." That became the family motto. David's fine on his own, but Tyler needs extra help. Christmas morning was always like watching two different families. Tyler would have this mountain of presents, the latest PlayStation, designer clothes, expensive sports equipment he'd use maybe twice. My pile was always smaller, filled with practical gifts. Tools, books, savings bonds that I couldn't even touch until I was 18. The worst part wasn't the gifts, though. It was the praise. Tyler could bring home a D+ and get a celebration dinner at his favorite restaurant because he tried really hard this semester. I'd bring home straight A's and honor roll certificates and get a nod with "That's nice, David," before they immediately shifted to asking Tyler about his day. By middle school, I started noticing the pattern everywhere. Tyler broke Mom's favorite vase playing ball in the house. Accidents happen, sweetie. I accidentally spilled juice on the carpet. 20-minute lecture about being more careful and losing TV privileges for a week. Tyler got caught cheating on a test. Mom marched down to the school to argue with the teacher about how the test was unfair, and Tyler was just struggling with test anxiety. I forgot to turn in one assignment. David, you're so irresponsible. How are you going to succeed in life if you can't handle simple tasks? The double standard was so obvious that even my friends started commenting on it. My buddy Jake once asked me why my parents treated Tyler like he was made of glass, while expecting me to handle everything perfectly. I didn't have an answer then. I do now. By high school, I'd figured out the game. I wasn't going to win the favorite son competition, so I focused on building something they couldn't take away from me. Got into finance and business early, started learning about investments, built my first stock portfolio with lawn mowing money. While Tyler was partying and barely maintaining a 2.5 GPA, I was pulling down a 3.9 and planning my escape route. I started my own lawn care business at 16, undercutting the local companies and providing better service. Within a year, I had 12 regular customers and was making more money than most adults in part-time jobs. Tyler couldn't even be bothered to maintain a summer job at the local pool for more than 3 weeks because it interfered with his social life. The real wake-up call came during college planning. Tyler wanted the full experience at Colorado State. 4 hours away, expensive dorms, meal plans, the works. Kid had never held a job in his life but wanted to study communications because it sounded easy. And of course, Mom and Dad were all for it. Me? I'd gotten into University of Colorado Denver with a partial scholarship for finance. Solid school, tough program, and I could live at home to save money. Seemed responsible, right? Wrong. The day I told them my plan, Mom hit me with the financial bomb that changed everything. "That's wonderful, David," Mom said when I explained I'd commute to save money. But if you're staying here, you'll need to contribute to household expenses. We'll need $900 a month for your room and board. I literally laughed. I thought she was joking. $900 a month? I was working part-time at a financial planning office, making $8.50 an hour. That would be over 25 hours a week just to pay rent to my own parents. Mom, Tyler's entire college experience is going to cost you guys like $40,000 a year. I'm trying to save you money by staying home. Her face went cold. Tyler needs our support to succeed in college. You've always been self-sufficient. This will teach you responsibility. Dad backed her up completely. It's time you learned what the real world costs, son. So let me get this straight. Tyler's lack of responsibility meant he deserved a free ride, but my responsibility meant I deserved to pay premium rent to live in my childhood bedroom. The logic was so backwards it gave me whiplash. But I paid it, every single month for 4 years. Worked 30-plus hours a week while taking advanced economics, financial analysis, and business management courses. Lived on ramen and peanut butter sandwiches, while Tyler called home asking for extra spending money because he wanted to take some girl to a fancy restaurant. I still remember overhearing Mom on the phone with him. Of course, sweetie. I'll transfer $500 to your account. College should be fun, not stressful about money. Meanwhile, I'm literally doing homework in my car between work shifts because I couldn't afford the campus parking pass. The real kicker came during my junior year when Tyler decided he wanted to change his major to sports management because communications was too hard. This required him to take an extra year of classes, adding another $40,000 to his already massive bill. Mom and Dad didn't even hesitate. Of course Tyler should follow his dreams. That same semester, I asked if they could help me pay for a financial planning certification course that would boost my career prospects. Cost? $400. Their response? David, you're so good with money. We're sure you can figure out how to afford it yourself. I paid for that certification with money I'd saved from skipping meals. The insult to injury? They'd brag to their friends about how independent and responsible I was, like they'd done me some kind of favor by charging me rent, as if financial struggle was character building, but only for me. Tyler graduated with a 2.3 GPA in sports management after 5 years. I graduated summa cum laude with a finance degree and 3 job offers after 4 years. Guess whose graduation got the bigger celebration? If you guessed Tyler's barely passed by the skin of his teeth ceremony, you'd be right. They threw him a huge party, invited all the relatives, and spent over $2,000 on catering. For mine, we went to Applebee's. Just the 4 of us. And Dad insisted we split the check. After college, I moved out immediately into a studio apartment that was basically a glorified closet. But it was mine, and I didn't owe anyone anything for it. Spent the next decade grinding like my life depended on it. Worked for a few financial firms, learned everything I could about investment strategies, started doing private consulting on the side. My specialty became helping small businesses optimize their finances and plan for growth. I had a knack for seeing inefficiencies and fixing them. Plus, I genuinely cared about helping people build wealth the right way. Word spread quickly in Denver's business community. By 28, I'd launched my own financial consulting firm. Started small, just me working out of my apartment, but I was good at what I did. Really good. Companies started paying serious money to have me analyze their operations and develop growth strategies. Within 3 years, I had 6 full-time employees and was pulling down more money than Dad made in his best years. Tyler? Complete opposite trajectory. Bounced between marketing jobs, sales gigs, even tried being a personal trainer for a while. Nothing stuck. He'd get fired for showing up late, or quit because the work was beneath him, or get laid off when companies realized he didn't actually do anything productive. The pattern was always the same. Tyler would get excited about a new job, talk about how this was finally his big break, then within 3 to 6 months, something would go wrong. It was never his fault, of course. The boss was unreasonable. The co-workers were jealous. The company was poorly managed. Never occurred to him that the common denominator in all these failures was him. Meanwhile, Mom and Dad kept making excuses. Tyler just hasn't found the right fit yet. He's too creative for corporate environments. Once he finds his passion, he'll really take off. Around 26, Tyler met Jessica at some club. Jessica is, well, there's no polite way to say this. She's a walking, talking gold digger who saw Tyler's pretty face and his parents' willingness to bankroll his life and decided she'd hit the jackpot. Jessica's one of those women who's never worked a real job, but somehow always has perfectly done nails, designer handbags, and opinions about how everyone else should spend their money. She got pregnant 3 months after meeting Tyler. Whether on purpose or not, I'll leave to your imagination. They had a shotgun wedding that cost mom and dad $30,000, which they didn't have, followed by two more kids in quick succession. Now they've got three kids under 8. Tyler still can't hold a job for more than 6 months, and Jessica spends her days on social media posting about how hard her life is while showing off whatever new thing mom and dad bought her. The bailouts became a monthly tradition. Car payments when Tyler got fired again, rent money when they got eviction notices, credit card payments, medical bills, grocery money. Even funded Tyler's brilliant idea to start a social media consulting business, which lasted about 3 months and accomplished nothing except burning through $8,000 of mom and dad's money. I kept my distance mostly, showed up for holidays but never shared details about my business or income. Why would I? Every success I had was met with polite disinterest before the conversation immediately pivoted to Tyler and Jessica's latest crisis, or what the kids needed. The few times I did mention business milestones, landing a major client, hiring new staff, getting featured in a local business magazine, the response was always the same. "That's nice, David," followed immediately by, "Tyler's been having such a hard time finding the right opportunity." I learned to just keep my mouth shut and focus on building my wealth. By 2022, my business was doing well enough that I was ready to buy a house. Not just any house. I wanted something that reflected all the work I'd put in. Started looking at places in the $400,000 range, which in Denver gets you something decent, but not crazy. I should have known better than to let anyone in my family find out about it. The leak happened through my own stupidity. I was at a client meeting and mentioned house hunting to make small talk. Turns out my client's wife goes to the same yoga class as Jessica. In a city of 700,000 people, what are the odds? The phone call started that same evening. "David, honey," Mom's voice was sickeningly sweet. "I heard you're looking to buy a house. How exciting! Why didn't you tell us?" I tried to play it down. "Just starting to look around, Mom. Nothing serious yet." Well, Tyler and Jessica and I have been talking, and we think this is such a wonderful opportunity. You'll want something with at least 4 bedrooms for when the kids visit, and a big backyard where they can play. Maybe a pool. Jessica was just saying how the kids would love a pool. I felt my blood pressure spike. "Mom, I'm looking for a place for me. I don't need 4 bedrooms." "Don't be silly, David. Family is the most important thing. You'll want space for Tyler and Jessica and the kids to come stay, and for your father and me to visit too. We could help you look. Jessica has such good taste." The audacity was breathtaking. I'd been living independently for over a decade, built a successful business, and saved responsibly for years to afford this house. But somehow Jessica, who'd never earned an honest dollar in her life, had good taste that I apparently needed. The next 2 weeks were a relentless assault of text messages, emails, and Zillow links. Not regular houses, mansions. 5 bedrooms, 6 bedrooms, massive lots, finished basements, 3-car garages. Every message highlighting features specifically designed for Tyler's family. "David, look at this one. The basement is perfect for Tyler to set up his home office. This house has a wonderful playroom area for the kids. The master suite has a sitting room where Jessica could do her makeup videos." They weren't even pretending this was about me anymore. Jessica started sending me direct messages about how excited she was to help decorate our new family space, and asking if I'd considered adding a hot tub. Our family space. A house I hadn't even bought yet with money I'd earned was already ours in her mind. Every listing they sent was at least $200,000 over my budget. When I pointed this out, Mom's response was, "Oh, David, with your business doing so well, I'm sure you can afford it. Besides, it's an investment. Property values always go up." Right. An investment in housing Tyler's family rent-free while I paid the mortgage, property taxes, insurance, and maintenance. What could go wrong? The breaking point came when Tyler called me directly, all excited. "Dude, Mom showed us this amazing place on Zillow. 7 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, huge kitchen. It's perfect for all of us. Jessica's already planning how to set up the kids' rooms." "Tyler, I'm not buying a house for all of us. I'm buying a house for me." "Yeah, but we're family, right? And it's not like you need all that space just for yourself. This way the kids can have their own rooms when they stay over. Jessica and I won't be cramped. Mom and Dad can visit whenever they want. It's like a win-win." I realized they weren't just expecting me to buy a house. They were expecting me to buy their house and let them live in it. The entitlement was breathtaking. "Tyler, who's paying for this house?" "Well, you are, but..." "And who's going to pay the mortgage every month?" "You, but David, we're talking about family here. We'd help out when we could." "When you could? You can't even pay your own rent consistently." "That's not fair, man. I've been having some bad luck with jobs lately, but things are turning around. I hung up on him. I stopped responding to their messages and kept looking on my own. Found exactly what I wanted about 3 weeks later. A modern 3-bedroom house in a nice neighborhood about 45 minutes from my parents. Perfect home office, 2-car garage, decent yard, and most importantly, space for exactly one person to live comfortably. Put in an offer and closed within a month. Kept the whole thing completely secret from family. I knew Mom was planning a big Thanksgiving dinner. She'd been talking about it for weeks, insisting everyone had to be there for a special announcement. I had a pretty good idea what the announcement would be, them revealing which mansion they'd picked out for me and expecting me to commit to buying it. The whole family was there when I arrived. Tyler and Jessica's 3 kids running around screaming. Jessica on her phone ignoring them while complaining about how tired she was. Tyler on the couch watching football. Mom bustling around the kitchen, making way too much food. Dad pretending to help, but mostly just drinking soda. Dinner conversation was predictable. Tyler complaining about his latest job, some sales position he'd probably get fired from within months. Jessica talking about how expensive everything was, and how hard it was to find good childcare. The kids being loud and disruptive while their parents ignored them. I sat there watching this chaos, and felt nothing but relief that I'd be going home to my quiet, clean, organized house where nobody screamed, broke things, or expected me to fix their problems. After dinner, while the kids were finally quiet watching TV, Mom stood up and clinked her water glass. Everyone, I have such exciting news. We found the perfect house for David. Tyler and Jessica immediately perked up, grinning like they'd won the lottery. Jessica actually clapped her hands together. It's absolutely beautiful, Mom continued, pulling out printed Zillow listings. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, finished basement, 3-car garage, and the most wonderful backyard for the children. The listing showed a $650,000 McMansion in an upscale suburb. Exactly the kind of house that screamed, I have more money than sense, and would cost a fortune to heat, cool, and maintain. The kitchen is amazing, Jessica chimed in, like she was already planning to live there. Perfect for hosting family dinners. And there's this gorgeous master suite that would be perfect for, well, whoever ends up in there. She gave me this weird wink that made my skin crawl. Tyler nodded enthusiastically. The basement would be perfect for my gaming setup and maybe a home gym. And that 3-car garage means plenty of space for my project car. His project car was a 1995 Honda Civic with 200,000 miles that he'd been restoring for 3 years. Mostly it sat in my parents' driveway leaking oil. They had it all planned out. In their minds, I was buying a family compound and they were all moving in. Jessica was already talking about which bedrooms would be perfect for the kids and how she could set up a craft room. We even drove by it last weekend, Mom said proudly. The neighborhood is so family-friendly. There's a playground just 2 blocks away, and the elementary school has an excellent rating. Dad joined in. Son, this is a real opportunity. Housing market's hot right now, but a place like this is an investment that'll pay off for generations. Your kids will thank you someday. My kids? I wasn't even dating anyone seriously. I let them finish their presentation, watching their excitement build. Tyler was already talking about which bedroom would be his office. Jessica was planning holiday decorations. Mom was discussing how we could convert the basement into an apartment for her and Dad when they got older. Then I smiled and dropped my bomb. That's interesting, but there's something I need to tell you all. I already bought a house. The room went dead silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Their faces went through this amazing progression. Confusion, disbelief, then slowly dawning horror. What do you mean? Mom's voice was sharp. I mean I bought a house, closed on it 2 weeks ago. I'm moving in this weekend? The explosion was immediate. Everyone started talking at once. Jessica was the loudest. What kind of house? Where is it? How many bedrooms? It's a 3-bedroom house about 45 minutes from here. Perfect for me. The meltdown was instant and spectacular. Jessica started screaming about how 3 bedrooms wasn't enough space for the family. Tyler was yelling about how I'd made this huge decision without consulting the people it affects. Mom was guilt-tripping me about family loyalty and how disappointed she was. But the real kicker came when Jessica showed her true colors. This is so selfish, David. What about the kids? What about us? You make all this money and you can't even think about your family. Tyler and I have been struggling. The apartment is way too small, and this was our chance to finally have some stability. Your chance? I asked calmly. What exactly did you contribute to buying this house, Jessica? I'm family now. Family helps family. You have all this money just sitting around while we can barely afford rent. So because I worked hard and saved money, I'm obligated to house you? Yes, that's what family does. The entitlement was staggering. In Jessica's mind, my success created an automatic debt to Tyler's failures. That's when Tyler dropped the real bombshell. Actually, David, our lease is up at the end of the month and we can't afford to renew it. The landlord raised the rent to $2,100, and I'm between jobs right now. We were counting on moving in with you. There it was. They weren't just dreaming about a family compound. They were literally homeless in 3 weeks and had decided I was their solution, without asking, without even telling me until this moment. That sounds like a personal problem, I said calmly. Dad slammed his fist on the table. David, that's your brother. Your nephews and niece. How can you be so heartless? I'm heartless. I worked my rear end off for 15 years to build a successful business while you guys bankrolled Tyler's failures. Now you want me to buy a mansion so he doesn't have to face the consequences of his choices? How is that my responsibility? Because you're family. Mom was crying now. We raised you better than this. You raised me to work hard and be independent. You raised Tyler to expect handouts. Now you're mad that I turned out exactly like you taught me to be? The screaming match that followed was epic. Jessica called me a selfish person who only cared about money. Tyler accused me of being jealous of his family. Mom cried about how she'd raised me to be more caring than this. Dad lectured me about responsibility to family. I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? Mom called after me. Home, to my house, that I bought, for me. The harassment started immediately. Constant calls, texts, voicemails from all of them. Jessica sent me these long, rambling messages about how I was destroying children's lives, and how I'd regret this when it's too late. Tyler alternated between guilt-tripping, I thought we were brothers, and threatening, you'll be sorry when something happens to us. Mom and Dad pulled out all the stops. They called my aunts and uncles, painting me as the heartless rich son who abandoned his struggling family. Most of them fell for it and started calling me too. David, I can't believe you'd let Tyler's children be homeless, my Aunt Sarah said. Your poor parents are beside themselves. Did they mention that Tyler and Jessica have made zero effort to find affordable housing? Or that they've been evicted twice in the past 3 years for not paying rent? That usually shut them up pretty quickly. But I held firm, blocked their numbers, moved into my beautiful new house, and focused on my business. My stress levels dropped dramatically once I wasn't dealing with their constant drama and demands. The house was everything I'd wanted. Quiet neighborhood, great home office setup, low maintenance, and most importantly, nobody else's mess to clean up or problems to solve. 3 months later, my Uncle Paul called. Paul's always been the straight shooter in the family, and unlike everyone else, he actually listened to my side of the story. David, you need to know what's really going on, he said. Your parents are in serious financial trouble. All those years of bailing out Tyler have wiped out their retirement savings, and they're carrying massive credit card debt. They took out a second mortgage on their house to keep funding his lifestyle. It all made sense. They weren't just enabling Tyler, they were bankrupting themselves to do it. And their grand plan was for me to buy the mansion so Tyler's family could live rent-free while they figured out their finances. It gets worse, Paul continued. Tyler and Jessica are about to be evicted. He lost that sales job 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, and Jessica's been running up debt on credit cards your parents co-signed for. They're all going down together. What about the kids? I asked. I might be angry with the adults, but the kids didn't choose the situation. That's the worst part. Tyler and Jessica are so focused on blaming you for their problems that they're not actually doing anything to solve them. The kids are the ones suffering. Perfect. They'd created their own disaster through years of bad decisions and toxic enabling, and now they were paying the price. But instead of taking responsibility, they were doubling down on making it my fault. My business continued to grow. By early 2024, I landed 3 major corporate contracts and hired 4 more employees. I bought a new truck, upgraded my home office, started planning a vacation to Japan. Life was good. Then Paul called again in March. David, it's gotten bad. Really bad. Your parents lost the house. They're staying with Tyler and Jessica in some extended stay motel, all 6 of them crammed into 2 adjoining rooms. Tyler's working at a call center making $12 an hour. Jessica's finally got a part-time retail job, but complains constantly about having to work. The kids are acting out, getting in trouble at school. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. Those kids didn't deserve this mess their parents had created. Your mom called me crying yesterday, Paul continued. Asked if I thought you'd help them if they apologized. I told her I doubted it, but she's desperate, David. They all are. 2 days later, I got a text from Mom. David, please. We need to talk. It's important. I didn't respond. Then Jessica texted, please, David, the kids need stability. I'm begging you. Still nothing. Finally, Tyler called from a number I hadn't blocked yet. When I answered, he sounded broken. David, man, I know I messed up. We all did. But the kids, they don't deserve this. We're living in a motel. Mom and Dad lost everything. Jessica's having panic attacks every day. I'll do anything, man. Anything you want. Just please help us. For the first time in months, Tyler sounded genuine. Not entitled, not demanding, just desperate and defeated. Anything? I asked. Yes. Whatever you want. I thought about it for a moment. I'll consider it. But first, I want all of you, Mom, Dad, you, and Jessica, to meet me at my house this Saturday at 2 p.m. You're going to sit in my living room and explain to me exactly how you plan to pay me back for 15 years of being treated like garbage while you bankrolled failure. David, we don't have money to pay you back, but not money, Tyler. I want something more valuable than money. I want acknowledgement. I want apologies. Real ones. And I want Jessica to explain to me why she thinks she's entitled to live in a house she didn't pay for. Saturday came. They showed up in Dad's beat-up old car, looking like they'd aged 10 years and 6 months. The kids were dirty and cranky. Jessica looked like she'd been crying for weeks. Tyler had lost weight and couldn't make eye contact. I let them sit in my beautiful living room and look around at what success actually looked like. New furniture, big screen TV, expensive art on the walls. Everything they'd wanted to take over. Nice place, Tyler said quietly. Thank you. I worked very hard for it. Now let's talk about why you're here. What followed was 2 hours of the most satisfying conversation of my life. One by one, they broke down and admitted everything. How they'd always favored Tyler. How they'd taken advantage of my success. How they'd expected me to fund their lifestyle without ever appreciating what I'd accomplished. Mom went first. David, I know we made mistakes. We thought Tyler needed more help, and you were always so capable. But we took advantage of that. We took you for granted. Dad nodded. Son, we were wrong. We should have been proud of what you accomplished, instead of just expecting you to fix everyone else's problems. Tyler was the hardest to break, but eventually he cracked too. I know I've been a screw-up, David. I know I've wasted every opportunity Mom and Dad gave me. I was jealous of you, man. You made everything look so easy, while I couldn't even keep a job. But that's on me, not you. Jessica was the most pathetic. I never had anything growing up, she sobbed. When I met Tyler, I thought his family had money. I thought you'd all take care of us. I didn't know it would end up like this. So you saw a meal ticket and went for it, I said. And when that didn't work out, you decided I should be the meal ticket instead. She couldn't even deny it. When they were done groveling, I leaned back in my chair. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to help you, but not the way you expected. Tyler, you're going to take a job with my company. Data entry, $15 an hour, and you'll work for it. No special treatment, no excuses, no showing up late. Jessica, you're going to get full-time employment and stop posting on social media about how hard your life is. Mom and Dad, you're going to get jobs too. Part-time, something to bring in income and give you purpose. But David, Mom started, we're in our 60s. Should have thought about that before you spent your retirement on Tyler's mistakes. I continued. I'll put a down payment on a basic 3-bedroom house for you to rent. Not own. Rent. From me. Tyler and Jessica will pay me rent every month, on time, no excuses. Mom and Dad can live there too, but everyone contributes. The kids can have stability, but everyone works for it. What if we can't make the payments? Tyler asked. I smiled. Then you'll find out what homelessness really feels like. Your choice. Tyler looked around my living room one more time, then back at me. When do I start? They took the deal. What else could they do? Update. 6 months later, Tyler's still working for me, doing exactly what I tell him to do for exactly what I pay him. He shows up on time, follows instructions, and has stopped making excuses when things don't go his way. Turns out he's actually capable of decent work when he has proper motivation. Jessica works at Target and has stopped posting inspirational quotes about deserving better. She's discovered that having a steady paycheck, even from retail work, feels better than constant financial anxiety. Who knew? Mom and Dad both got part-time jobs and are slowly rebuilding some dignity. Mom works at a local flower shop. Dad does bookkeeping for a small construction company. They're not making much, but they're contributing instead of just consuming. The kids are in a good school district, have their own rooms, and are learning what it means to be part of a family where everyone contributes instead of just taking. Their grades have improved, Their behavior problems have decreased, and they seem genuinely happier with the stability. The house I bought for them isn't fancy, basic three-bedroom ranch in a decent neighborhood, but it's clean, safe, and affordable. More importantly, everyone who lives there has to work to stay there. And me? I'm planning that trip to Japan, driving my new truck, and sleeping peacefully in my beautiful house that no one else gets to live in. My business is thriving, my stress levels are manageable, and I finally have the family dynamic I always wanted, one where I'm in control. They call me every month to thank me for saving the family. What they don't understand is that I didn't save them. I bought them, and now they work for me, live in my property, and follow my rules. Tyler texted me yesterday. Thanks for giving me a chance, man. I know I don't deserve it. He's right. He doesn't deserve it. None of them do. But sometimes the best revenge isn't refusing to help. It's helping on your own terms. They wanted me to fund their lifestyle. Instead, I gave them exactly what they always needed, but never wanted. Accountability. It's exactly what they deserve, and exactly what I always knew I'd end up with. Complete control over my own life, and theirs too. Best investment I ever made. Story 5. My parents called me uneducated trash and kicked me out. Get out, you lowlife, Dad shouted. They had no idea I make $15 million. I just said, all right, and didn't argue. The next day, I moved into my beach house. So, this is probably going to be a long one, but I need to get this off my chest. Sorry in advance for any typos. I'm still pretty emotional about all this. Growing up in Columbus, Ohio, I was always the weird kid in my family. While my siblings Thomas and Jennifer were doing the whole traditional thing, good grades, college prep, following every rule, I was out there trying to make money however I could. I'm talking like, when I was 10 years old, I had this elaborate lemonade stand that put other kids to shame. I had different flavors, loyalty punch cards, the whole 9 yards. Other kids thought I was nuts, but I made decent money for a 10-year-old. By 13, I was fixing people's computers for $20 an hour when the local repair shop was charging $75. I taught myself everything from YouTube and forums, spent hours troubleshooting problems that certified technicians couldn't figure out. My parents thought it was cute, but also kind of concerning. Dad would always say stuff like, Amanda needs to focus on her real studies. These little games won't pay the bills when she grows up. My dad, William, was an accountant at the same boring firm for like 30 years. Super traditional guy, thought college was literally the only way to succeed in life. My mom, Patricia, was an elementary school teacher. Pretty quiet, usually just agreed with whatever Dad said. They had this vision of success that was like, good grades, good college, good job, good life. Anything outside that formula was basically failure to them. Thomas and Jennifer ate it up. They were the perfect kids. Honor roll, student council, all the college prep stuff. I tried to care about that stuff, but it felt so pointless. While they were joining clubs to look good on applications, I was learning actual business skills, teaching myself web design, reading every business book I could get my hands on. In high school, I started this online store selling customized phone cases. This was before everyone was doing it, so I was pretty early to the game. I designed them myself, found manufacturers, handled customer service, shipping, returns, basically ran a whole operation out of my bedroom. Made almost $2,000 before graduation, which felt like $1 million to me at the time. But my parents couldn't see past the fact that my GPA wasn't perfect. They kept pushing me toward college, saying things like, you can do your little computer hobby on the side, but you need a real education first. It was frustrating as hell, because I was already learning more from running my business than any of my classmates were learning in their AP classes. The worst part was family dinners. Thomas would talk about his internship at some accounting firm. Jennifer would brag about making Dean's List. And when it came to me sharing about my business, Dad would just kind of nod and change the subject. Like my achievements didn't count because they weren't happening in a classroom. Looking back, I think they were scared for me. In their minds, success looked exactly one way, and I was completely off script. But at the time, it just felt like they thought I was stupid or lazy, when really I was working harder than anyone else in the family. To keep the peace, I agreed to try community college. Huge mistake. I lasted exactly 1 semester before I wanted to scream. The business classes were taught by professors who had never actually run a business. They just read from textbooks about theories that didn't match what I was experiencing in the real world. Meanwhile, I was itching to work on my actual business ideas. When I told my parents I was dropping out, World War III broke out in our house. The argument lasted 4 whole days. Dad was furious, like face bright red, yelling about how I was throwing my life away. and no child of mine will be a college dropout working minimum wage jobs forever. Mom cried. A lot. Jennifer and Thomas looked at me like I had completely lost my mind, but I couldn't do it anymore. I felt like I was wasting time sitting in classes when I could be out there actually building something. So at 19, I packed up my stuff and moved out with $2,000 in savings from my various side hustles. Those first few months were brutal, not gonna lie. I found this tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood where you definitely didn't do laundry after dark, lived on ramen noodles and whatever was on sale at the grocery store, worked 18-hour days trying to build my e-commerce platform, while my parents kept calling to ask when I was coming to my senses and going back to school. My first 3 business attempts crashed and burned spectacularly. The first was a dropshipping thing that went sideways when suppliers sent out defective products, and customers started demanding refunds I couldn't afford. Lost about $800 on that one. Then I tried social media management for small businesses, but I was so desperate for clients that I underpriced everything and ended up working 20 hours a day for basically nothing. Burned out hard and lost most of my clients when I couldn't keep up. The third attempt was handmade jewelry. I'm not artistic at all, turns out. Made some decent stuff but couldn't figure out how to scale beyond selling at local markets. Each failure sucked, but I was learning things they don't teach in business school, like how to deal with difficult suppliers, how to price services properly, how to manage cash flow when you're barely scraping by. My family's reaction to these failures was not supportive. Dad would call and leave voicemails like, "This is exactly what we warned you about. It's not too late to go back to school." Thomas would text me job listings for entry-level positions with "thought you might be interested" messages. They meant well, I think, but it felt like they were just waiting for me to fail so they could say, "I told you so." The turning point came when I met Sophia at this networking event. She was probably 20 years older than me, had built and sold multiple businesses, and for some reason took an interest in helping me out. She became the mentor I desperately needed, someone who actually understood what I was trying to do and didn't think I was crazy for not following the traditional path. "Education comes in many forms, Amanda," she told me over coffee one day. "Some of the most successful people I know learned by doing, not by sitting in classrooms." First time in years, someone had validated my choices instead of questioning them. With Sophia's guidance, I finally got my act together. At 22, I launched Heartland Made, an e-commerce platform connecting small American manufacturers with customers who wanted locally made products. The timing was perfect because there was this huge trend towards supporting small businesses and made in America stuff. I started small, just 27 artisan partners in 3 states. My apartment was basically half office, half living space. Had a futon that doubled as my couch and bed. My desk and printer took up most of the room. Worked from 5 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day, handling everything myself. Website coding, customer service, accounting, marketing, you name it. The breakthrough came about 8 months in, when this popular lifestyle blogger featured one of our partners. Orders started flooding in and completely overwhelmed our basic systems. I worked 72 hours straight trying to fulfill orders and upgrade our website so it wouldn't crash. Made $10,000 in revenue that weekend. More money than I'd ever seen in my bank account. I was so excited I called my parents to share the news. Dad's response? "That's nice, honey, but it's probably just temporary. You know you can always go back to college when this thing runs its course." His words stung, but they also lit a fire under me. I was going to prove him wrong, not with arguments, but with results. The next 5 years were insane. Heartland Made grew way beyond what I originally imagined. We went from 27 partners to over 400 manufacturers and craftspeople across all 50 states. Every stage of growth brought new challenges that nearly broke me, but also taught me things no college course ever could. When our servers crashed during a major Black Friday promotion, I stayed up 48 hours straight with developers getting everything back online while personally responding to hundreds of angry customer emails. When a bigger competitor tried to poach our best sellers by offering better commission rates, I drove around the country meeting with each partner in person, strengthening relationships and improving our terms. The most difficult period was year 2 when we were growing too fast for our cash flow, had inventory needs that were outpacing revenue, and I went 4 months without paying myself a salary. Moved to an even smaller apartment, ate nothing but rice and beans, negotiated payment terms with suppliers while trying not to let them know how close we were to going under. But we made it through, and those lean months taught me financial discipline that served me well as the company expanded. By year 3, we hit $1 million in annual revenue. I celebrated alone in my office with a single glass of champagne after everyone went home, thinking about how far I'd come from that first failed dropshipping business. Here's the thing, though. I kept my success pretty quiet with my family. They knew I had some kind of website business that was doing okay, but I downplayed everything. Part of me was scared they'd find some way to minimize it, and part of me was still seeking their approval in this weird way. So when my family needed help, I started helping them anonymously. When mom got diagnosed with breast cancer in year 4, and they were looking at $75,000 in medical bills, not covered by insurance, I paid it all directly to the hospital and specialists. Dad mentioned some insurance settlement that had saved them from debt, never knowing where the money really came from. Thomas needed help with a down payment for his first house. Fell $40,000 short of what the bank required. I set up a fake family loan through a separate account, made it look like it came from some distant uncle. He took the money gratefully but still made comments about me needing to get a real job with benefits. Jennifer's dream wedding was going to be ruined when her fiancé lost his job 6 months before the ceremony. I covered the $50,000 shortfall for venue and catering. She knew the money came from me but downplayed it at family gatherings, calling it help from my little website business that was having a good year. The disconnect was painful. By day, I was running strategy meetings for a multi-million-dollar company, making decisions that affected hundreds of partner businesses. By night, I was getting texts from family members who treated me like the college dropout who got lucky with some internet thing. But I kept helping because I loved them, even if they didn't understand or respect what I'd built. I figured eventually they'd see that my path had worked out, that maybe college wasn't the only way to succeed. I was wrong about that. Dad's 60th birthday was coming up, and I made a decision that I thought was going to finally change everything. I was tired of hiding my success, tired of being treated like the family failure. I bought him a substantial gift, a fully funded retirement account, and planned to be honest about my business for the first time. I practiced what I was going to say for weeks. I wasn't trying to brag or show off. I just wanted them to understand that my unconventional path had actually worked out. Maybe even get some of that approval I'd been seeking my whole life. The evening started normal enough. Same house, same furniture, same family dynamics. Thomas showed up in his business casual outfit with his wife, talking about his latest promotion. Jennifer was going on about potentially making junior partner at her accounting firm. When Daniel mentioned something about e-commerce growth, Thomas quickly changed the subject to his kids' Little League stats. Nobody asked me a single question about my life or business during the whole pre-dinner conversation. I waded through discussions about neighborhood gossip, Thomas's kids' achievements, Jennifer's vacation plans. Finally, over dessert, I decided it was time. Dad, Mom, everyone, I started, my heart racing even though I tried to stay calm. I wanted to share some news about my company. Heartland Made was recently valued at $20 million. We've received several acquisition offers, and I've been featured in Business Insider and Entrepreneur magazine. The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. Mom froze with her fork halfway to her mouth. Jennifer and Daniel exchanged glances. Thomas just stared at me. Dad was the first to speak, and his tone was dismissive. What exactly does that mean, Amanda? These internet businesses use all sorts of funny math to come up with these valuations. I kept my cool and explained how business valuations work, talked about our revenue streams, growth trajectory, mentioned our office with 38 employees and partnerships with over 400 manufacturers. Thomas interrupted before I could finish. So you got lucky with this online thing. That's great. But some of us have been building real careers with actual qualifications. He emphasized qualifications while looking at his wife for backup. It's not luck, I replied, trying to stay calm. It's 7 years of working 18-hour days, solving complex problems, and building something meaningful. We've helped save dozens of American manufacturing businesses that were about to close. Mom finally spoke up. That sounds impressive, dear, though I still wish you had finished your degree. Even with this business, education is important. I was getting frustrated but pressed on. Actually, I brought something for Dad. I handed him the envelope with the retirement account documentation. I wanted to make sure you both have a comfortable retirement. Instead of gratitude, Dad's face got angry as he realized what he was looking at. What is this supposed to be? Some kind of charity? We didn't raise you to throw money around like you're better than everyone. That's not my intention at all, I explained. I just wanted to help. The same way I helped with Mom's medical bills, Thomas's house down payment, and Jennifer's wedding. That's when everything exploded. All three of them snapped at once. My secret financial help was suddenly exposed. Dad sputtered, "That was all you?" Jennifer looked mortified. Thomas's expression turned ugly. Mom just looked confused. "You've been secretly paying for things behind our backs?" Dad's voice kept getting louder. "Playing the big shot with your internet money?" "I was just trying to help," I replied, my voice getting smaller despite myself. I never wanted recognition. Help? Thomas jumped in. By making us feel like charity cases? Some of us work honest jobs with actual degrees, not getting rich quick with online schemes. It's not a scheme, I insisted. I built a legitimate business that helps American manufacturers reach customers. We employ dozens of people with good salaries and benefits. Dad stood up, his napkin falling to the floor. You drop out of college against our advice, disappear into your little internet world, and now you come back throwing money around like you have all the answers. That's not what I'm doing, I protested, fighting to keep my voice steady. You think your money makes you successful? He continued, his voice getting even louder. You are still just uneducated trash who got lucky. Anyone can get lucky. The room went dead silent. Mom gasped softly but said nothing in my defense. Thomas looked down at his plate with what looked like a slight smile. Jennifer seemed torn between embarrassment and agreement. William? Mom finally whispered, but it was too late and too quiet to matter. No, Dad continued, fully enraged now. I've worked my entire life the right way. Got an education, built a respectable career, raised a family. I will not be shown up in my own home by my dropout daughter. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse. I should go. Yes, you should, Dad spat. Get out of my house, you lowlife. Your money doesn't make you part of this family. We have standards. Each word hit like a physical blow. I looked around the table, searching for any ally, any sign of support. There was none. Thomas wouldn't even make eye contact. Jennifer stared at her plate. Mom just sat there in shock. Happy birthday, Dad, I said quietly, walking toward the door with whatever dignity I had left. Nobody followed me out. Nobody called after me. I got to my car with shaking hands, could barely grip the steering wheel. As I drove away from the house I grew up in, I realized something fundamental had broken that could never be fixed. The drive back to my hotel was a blur of streetlights and tears. Had to pull over twice when I couldn't see the road anymore. The irony wasn't lost on me. I owned a multi-million-dollar company, but was spending the night in a hotel in my hometown, because my own family's house was no longer open to me. In that sterile hotel room, I replayed the evening over and over. Had I been too proud? Too forward? Should I have handled it differently? The financial help I'd given now felt like a desperate attempt to buy approval. I'd never get through achievements alone. I pulled out my laptop and started documenting every cent I'd given my family over the years. The list was staggering. $75,000 for Mom's cancer treatment, $120,000 for Thomas's house, including renovations he requested later, $50,000 for Jennifer's wedding and honeymoon, $22,000 for Dad's car repair, $35,000 for Mom's kitchen renovation, countless smaller expenses, Christmas gifts, birthday presents, emergencies. Nearly $300,000 total. Money I never expected back, given freely out of love for a family that had just called me trash. Around midnight, Jennifer texted, Dad is still upset, but he'll get over it. You know how he gets when his authority is challenged. No apology, no acknowledgement of how horrible the whole thing was, just an expectation that I'd absorb the abuse and pretend nothing happened. I didn't respond. Instead, I contacted a therapist back in the city where I lived. Dr. Richardson agreed to an emergency virtual session the next day. Family wounds cut deepest, she observed after I told her everything, especially when they target the very things we've worked hardest to overcome. Over the next few sessions, Dr. Richardson helped me understand the complex dynamics at play. My success threatened the family hierarchy and the values my parents had built their lives around. My financial help, rather than earning gratitude, had created resentment by highlighting a shift in power they weren't prepared to accept. Your father's identity is built around being the provider and authority, she explained. Your success challenges both roles. I started journaling, documenting not just that horrible night, but patterns throughout my childhood. Subtle ways my entrepreneurial spirit had been discouraged, times when academic achievements were celebrated while business successes were minimized. The constant reminder that without a degree, I'd never truly succeed. This process revealed how deeply I'd internalized these messages. Despite outward success, part of me still felt like the family failure, the dropout who had something to prove. This explained my reluctance to openly discuss my achievements and my continuous financial support without recognition. A week after the disaster dinner, Jennifer called. I let it go to voicemail. Amanda, please call back. Dad feels bad about what happened. We all do. But you have to understand how it looked. You coming in and basically showing off your money. It was insensitive to the rest of us who worked hard for our careers. I deleted the message. The narrative twist was breathtaking. Somehow I'd become the villain for stating facts about my business, after years of minimizing my success. Thomas texted next. Family is family, let's move past this. No apology, just an expectation that I'd accept my role and the treatment that came with it. 2 weeks later, I made a decision that felt both terrifying and liberating. I was going to prioritize self-respect over toxic family dynamics. The beach house I'd bought in Naples, Florida the year before as an investment property would become my new home. Before leaving Ohio for good, I wrote a letter to my parents. Dear Mom and Dad, I have spent years seeking your approval and respect. I supported our family financially while downplaying my success to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. Despite building a $20 million company that helps preserve American manufacturing jobs, I've been made to feel like the family failure because I chose a different path. When Dad called me uneducated trash and a lowlife, it revealed how you truly see me. No amount of success will ever change that perception. I can't continue participating in a relationship where my worth is measured by credentials rather than character and achievement. I will always love you both, but I need distance for my own well-being. I hope someday we can rebuild our relationship on a foundation of mutual respect. Love, Amanda. I sealed it and mailed it personally. No response came. With my executive assistant's help, I arranged for my belongings in Ohio to be packed and shipped to Florida. Donated most of my furniture and clothes to local charities. I wanted a fresh start with minimal baggage. My company could run remotely with occasional trips back for important meetings. The leadership team I'd built was strong enough to handle day-to-day operations without me physically being there. As I boarded the plane to Florida, I felt a complex mix of grief and freedom. The family I'd tried so hard to please was behind me, but so was the burden of seeking approval I'd never receive. Naples, Florida greeted me with warm sunshine and salt air, such a contrast to the gray Ohio winter I'd left behind. My beach house sat on a quiet stretch of shoreline, a modern two-story place with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Gulf of Mexico. I'd only visited twice for brief vacations, so it felt more like an upscale hotel than a home. Making this place truly mine became a form of therapy. Started with the master bedroom, replacing the generic beige bedding with handcrafted quilts from one of my Heartland-made artisans in North Carolina. The mass-produced art came down, replaced with original pieces from emerging American artists I discovered through the business. Every morning, I woke up to the sound of waves and authentic creativity surrounding me. The kitchen transformation came next. Installed open shelving to display handmade pottery from our Vermont and New Mexico partners. The industrial appliances stayed, but colorful textiles and locally crafted wooden serving boards warmed the space. Establishing routines became essential. Each morning started with a sunrise walk along the beach, bare feet in cool sand, collecting shells and watching dolphins. Found a local coffee shop run by a Cuban-American family where I became a regular. They greeted me by name, not by my order number. Running the business remotely was easier than I expected. Video conferences replaced in-person meetings, and our systems functioned smoothly. Without the daily commute and office distractions, I was actually more productive and made clearer decisions from my peaceful new headquarters. My executive team visited after the first month for 3 days of strategic planning on my oceanfront deck. Several commented on positive changes they noticed in my leadership style. You seem more centered, Marcus, my operations director, observed. More confident in your decisions. He was right. Without the constant undercurrent of seeking family approval, my business instincts flowed more naturally. I trusted my judgment without the shadow of Dad's criticism hanging over every choice. Community involvement became another anchor. Joined the local chamber of commerce and a business women's networking group. Unlike back home where I'd downplayed my success, here I was open about my company and achievements. The respect came naturally without baggage of who I'd been before. I befriended Eliza, who owned a local art gallery, and she introduced me to her circle of accomplished women in their 30s and 40s. They valued each other for present achievements rather than past credentials. Our weekly dinner gatherings became highlights, filled with laughter and conversations that never included questions about my education or suggestions that I'd gotten lucky. 3 weeks into my Florida life, Thomas showed up unannounced at my door on a Saturday afternoon. Nice place, he said, whistling as he surveyed the ocean view from my living room. Really nice. His appearance was jarring in my new sanctuary. He looked out of place in his button-down shirt and pressed khakis among my casual coastal decor. What brings you to Florida, Thomas? I asked, not offering a drink or seat. Family, he replied with that confident smile he'd used to charm our parents since childhood. And I could use some advice about an investment opportunity, possibly a loan to get in on the ground floor. Without our parents as an audience, his pretense dropped quickly. This was a financial visit, nothing more. I'm not making loans to family members anymore, I said firmly. That chapter is closed. His expression hardened. So that's how it is? You move to your beach mansion and forget where you came from. Dad was right about you. Dad called me uneducated trash and kicked me out of his house, I reminded him. Is that what you came here to reinforce? Thomas backpedaled quickly. He didn't mean it like that. You know how he gets. Family fights happen. That wasn't a fight. It was a revelation, I replied. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have plans this afternoon. After showing him out, I sat on my deck watching waves, surprisingly unshaken by the encounter. The boundaries I was establishing felt right, even if they were painful to implement. That evening, I made a significant decision, contacted my lawyer, and established an anonymous scholarship fund at the community college I'd briefly attended. The Amanda Wilson Entrepreneurship Scholarship would provide full tuition and mentorship to 5 students annually who demonstrated entrepreneurial potential but lacked traditional academic advantages. Make sure the selection criteria focus on demonstrated initiative and creative problem solving, not grades, I instructed. And find mentors who've built actual businesses, not just taught business classes. Weeks turned into months, and the pain of family rejection transformed from an acute wound to more like an old injury that occasionally ached. I was building something new, not just a home, but an authentic life aligned with my values rather than someone else's expectations. Then, something unexpected happened that brought everything full circle. The Naples Business Journal wasn't a publication I normally read, but Eliza texted me early one morning insisting I pick up a copy. Page 3. You're gonna want to see this. There I was, photographed on my deck with the Gulf of Mexico behind me, under the headline, E-commerce innovator brings multi-million-dollar business to Naples. The journalist had done her research, detailing Heartland Made's growth from startup to $20 million valuation, our impact on American manufacturing, and my recent entrepreneurship scholarship foundation. I didn't authorize this, I told Eliza when she called to congratulate me. Public records, she explained. Property transfers, business registrations. Once they knew you were here, the rest was easy to piece together. Besides, it's a great article. She was right. The piece was well-researched and flattering, focusing on business accomplishments rather than personal drama. I thought little more about it until the following week when my phone started lighting up with social media notifications. The article had been picked up by several larger business publications, then shared extensively on LinkedIn and Facebook. Former high school classmates suddenly remembered our friendship. Teachers claimed they'd always seen my potential. Most surprising were messages from small business owners in my hometown thanking me for representing what was possible without following traditional paths. You inspired me to finally launch my business, wrote one former classmate. If you could build something so substantial without a fancy degree, maybe my idea has merit too. The local newspaper back home even ran a condensed version with an additional angle. Local entrepreneur makes national impact. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same community that had subtly reinforced my parents' disappointment now celebrated me as a hometown success story. Through this ripple effect of publicity, my family inevitably discovered the full extent of my success. First came a friend request from my cousin Susan, followed by several other extended family members who'd previously shown little interest in my life. Then the text from Mom. I saw the article about your company. Very impressive. Dad and I are so proud. No mention of Dad's cruel words. No acknowledgement of the rift. Just a casual claim of pride that had been notably absent when I sat at their dinner table. Dad's voicemail arrived the next day, his tone artificially jovial. Amanda, big news about your company in the paper. Always knew you had it in you. There seems to have been a misunderstanding last time we spoke. Call me back when you can. A misunderstanding. That's how he characterized calling his daughter uneducated trash and ordering her out of his house. 3 days later, Mom texted again. We're thinking of visiting Florida next month. Would love to see your new place. Let us know if that works for you. The message hit my stomach like a stone. 6 weeks of healing, of building a new life free from their judgment, and now they wanted to simply appear at my doorstep as if nothing had happened. I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Richardson. You have several options, she advised after listening to my concerns. You can decline the visit entirely. You can agree but set strict boundaries about what you will and won't discuss. Or you can see this as an opportunity for honest conversation that might lead to healing, though that requires their willingness to acknowledge the harm done. After careful consideration, I texted Mom. You and Dad are welcome to visit, but we need to have an honest conversation about what happened at his birthday dinner before we can move forward. Please let me know if you're open to that kind of discussion. Her response came quickly. Of course, dear. We just want to put this behind us and be a family again. The phrasing troubled me. That desire to put this behind us without addressing it directly. But I confirmed dates for their visit. As the day approached, I prepared both practically and emotionally. Arranged for them to stay at a nearby hotel rather than my home, preserving my personal space. Role-played difficult conversations with Dr. Richardson, practicing setting boundaries without becoming defensive. They arrived on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. I met them at a beachfront restaurant for lunch, a public setting that would help moderate the initial interaction. They looked smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had in Ohio. Dad's confident posture seemed diminished, Mom more nervous than I remembered. "This place is something else," Dad said, gesturing at the turquoise water visible through the restaurant windows. "You've done well for yourself, Amanda." The slight emphasis on "for yourself" didn't escape me. The implication that my success existed in isolation from family values. "Thank you," I replied simply, not filling the awkward silence that followed. Mom jumped in with small talk about their flight, the weather, how different Florida was from Ohio. I responded politely but didn't help carry the conversation. Finally, after our food arrived, Dad cleared his throat. "About what happened at my birthday dinner. You called me uneducated trash and a lowlife," I stated calmly. "You told me to get out of your house and that my money didn't make me part of the family." His face flushed. "I was surprised by the news about your business. It caught me off guard. I may have overreacted. Not an apology, an excuse. I need to understand," I continued, maintaining eye contact. "Was that reaction about me sharing my success, or about learning I'd been helping the family financially?" "Both," Mom interjected. "It felt like you were showing off, like you were saying you're better than us now." "I never said or thought that," I replied. "I spent years hiding my success to avoid making anyone uncomfortable. I helped financially because I could and wanted to support the family I love." The conversation continued in this vein throughout lunch. No genuine apology emerged, only justifications and attempts to minimize the severity of what had happened. The subtext became increasingly clear. They were here because my public success made rejecting me socially awkward, not because they'd reconsidered their assessment of my worth. As we finished our meal, I made a decision. "I'd like to show you my home, but first I need to be very clear about something. I won't pretend that dinner never happened. I won't accept being called names or having my choices denigrated. If you want a relationship moving forward, it has to be based on mutual respect." They exchanged glances before Dad nodded stiffly. "That seems reasonable." When they arrived at my beach house later that afternoon, their expressions as they took in the expansive ocean view told me everything. This tangible evidence of my success was impossible to dismiss or minimize. The $20 million valuation was no longer an abstract number, but manifested in beachfront real estate and tasteful luxury. "This is quite something," Dad managed, his voice tight, as I showed them through the house, pointing out handcrafted items from Heartland-made artisans that decorated each room. I realized something profound. Their approval, which I'd sought for so long, no longer held the power it once did. I was proud of this home and the business that made it possible, regardless of their reaction. That revelation was perhaps the most valuable outcome of their visit, worth more than any apology they might have offered. We talked for hours on the deck as the sun set over the Gulf. No dramatic reconciliation occurred. No tearful group hug that magically healed decades of misunderstanding. Instead, we reached a fragile understanding, a starting point rather than a conclusion. "Moving forward," I explained as the evening drew to a close, "I'm open to rebuilding our relationship, but with clear boundaries. I won't accept being demeaned for my educational choices or having my success attributed to luck rather than hard work." They agreed, though I sensed Dad's reluctance in his tight smile and qualified responses. Mom seemed more genuinely receptive, perhaps recognizing for the first time her role in enabling dynamics that had caused so much pain. After they returned to Ohio, I reflected on the visit and the path that had led me here. The healing process was far from complete, but significant steps had been taken. I maintained limited contact with my parents in the months that followed, brief weekly phone calls that gradually became less awkward. My relationship with my siblings evolved differently. Jennifer eventually offered a genuine apology for her role in the family dynamics, and we slowly rebuilt a connection based on adult friendship rather than childhood patterns. Thomas remained distant, occasionally sending holiday greetings, but making no real effort to understand or acknowledge the harm done. The most important lesson from all this? Your value isn't determined by others' perceptions, especially those clouded by outdated beliefs or expectations. Success comes in countless forms, often unexpected ones. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead to the most authentic and fulfilling paths forward. Story 6. My wife kicked me out after her son's lies. 3 weeks later, she asked if I'd reflected. I handed her divorce papers, and her son's entire scheme collapsed. Hey Reddit, my stepson spent months destroying my marriage with calculated lies. When his mom finally asked me to come home and apologize, I showed up with evidence that ended everything. What followed was absolute chaos. But before I get to that beautiful disaster, let me set the scene. I'm standing in my driveway at 4 p.m. on a Tuesday, watching my clothes fly out of the second-story window like confetti at the world's worst parade. My wife Lauren is screaming from up there, her face red with rage I've never seen before. She's telling me to get out of her house. Except it's not her house, it's mine. But we'll get to that later. Just this morning we were having breakfast together. Just this morning everything seemed fine. Now her 17-year-old son Jake is standing behind her with this look on his face. Something between triumph and fake concern. He's got his hand on her shoulder like he's comforting her, playing the devoted son. But his eyes meet mine for just a second through that window, and I swear I see a smirk. That smirk told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't teenage drama. This was calculated, planned, and executed perfectly by a kid who'd been playing chess while I was playing checkers. Let me back up and explain how a normal Tuesday morning turned into the day my marriage imploded. I'm Derek, 38 years old. I work in industrial equipment sales, the kind of boring job that pays well but makes people's eyes glaze over at parties when you explain what you do. Been with the same company for 12 years? Steady income, decent benefits, zero drama. The most exciting part of my week is usually deciding which sandwich shop to hit for lunch. I met Lauren 4 years ago at a coffee shop where she worked as a manager. She was beautiful, kind, and a widow who'd lost her husband to illness 3 years prior. Her son Jake was 13 then, a quiet kid who seemed lost without his father. I understood that. Losing a parent at that age leaves marks. I fell for Lauren pretty much immediately. She had this way of making you feel like you were the only person in the room when she talked to you. We dated for 8 months before I proposed, and she said yes with tears in her eyes. I promised both of them I'd never try to replace Jake's father, but I'd be there for them. Always. I meant it too. The first 2 years were honestly great. Jake was distant with me, sure, but I understood. I never pushed, never demanded he call me dad or anything like that. I helped him with homework when he asked, drove him to his friends' houses, paid for his phone and clothes without keeping score. When we got married, I bought us a bigger house so Jake could have his own space, a proper bedroom, not the cramped room he'd had at Lauren's old apartment. Lauren was happy. We were happy. I thought Jake was adjusting. Looking back now with perfect hindsight, I can see exactly when things started to shift. When the poison started dripping into our marriage, slow and steady, like water eroding stone. About 9 months ago, Jake started making these little comments to his mother. I'd hear them sometimes when I walked into a room. Little things that sounded sweet on the surface, but had this edge underneath that made my skin crawl. He'd tell her how beautiful she was, how she could be a model, how she deserved someone who treated her like a queen. At first, I thought it was just a kid complimenting his mom. Sweet, right? Then he'd bring up his dead father. Whenever Lauren and I set any kind of boundary, curfew, homework requirements, basic house rules, Jake would drop some variation of, Dad would have let me do this, or Dad understood me better. Lauren would shut it down at first, firmly telling him that I was good to them, and that comparing wasn't fair. But the comments kept coming, subtle and constant, wearing her down bit by bit. He'd question why they had to follow my rules in what he called their house. Never mind that I'd bought the house, that my name was on the deed, that I paid the mortgage every month without complaint. In Jake's version of reality, this was their house, and I was just living in it. I tried talking to Lauren about it, suggested maybe Jake was having trouble adjusting, that we should consider family therapy. She waved it off as typical teenage drama and told me I was being too sensitive, but I noticed her looking at me differently sometimes, like she was studying me, searching for something, like Jake's words were planting seeds of doubt that were starting to sprout. Then about 4 months ago, things got weirder in a way that made me feel genuinely crazy. Jake would be this completely different person depending on whether his mother was in the room. When Lauren was around, he'd be laughing and joking with me, acting like we were buddies, calling me by my first name in this friendly way, asking about my day, seeming genuinely interested in my boring equipment sales stories. But the absolute second Lauren left the room, like the instant she was out of earshot, his face would go blank, completely neutral, like someone had flipped a switch and turned off his personality. I'd try to engage with him, suggest activities we could do together, and he'd give me flat one-word responses while staring at his phone. Then Lauren would come back and boom. Animated, friendly, Jake would reappear like nothing happened. I started feeling insane, like I was imagining the whole thing or reading too much into normal teenage moodiness. But the pattern was too consistent, too deliberate. This kid was performing for his mother and dropping the act the second she wasn't watching. The real explosion, the beginning of the end, started 3 months ago when Jake asked me for a car. Not just any car, a $35,000 BMW like his friend Tyler had gotten for his 17th birthday. He showed me pictures on his phone, talking about how all his friends had nice cars and how he was embarrassed to have me drive him places in my old work truck. My truck was 3 years old and perfectly fine, but apparently it wasn't good enough for Jake's image. I sat him down at the kitchen table and tried to be reasonable. Explained that $35,000 was too much money for a teenager's first car. Told him we could find a reliable used car for around $10,000, something safe and dependable. Suggested he could get a part-time job to help with insurance payments, teach him some responsibility. He stared at me like I'd just suggested he walk everywhere barefoot. Then his face crumpled and he ran to his room where I could hear him crying. Loud, dramatic sobs that carried through the entire house. That night, Lauren was ice cold, questioning whether it was really necessary to deny him, pointing out everything Jake had been through, losing his father, having to adjust to a new family, asking if it would really kill me to just give him this one thing. I was shocked. 35 grand for a teenager's first car was objectively insane. I told her that, tried to explain basic financial responsibility. She turned away from me in bed and said, I didn't understand what it was like to be his mother. After that incident, everything changed. Like someone had flipped a switch in our marriage, and suddenly, I was the enemy. Jake started having these whispered conversations with Lauren that would stop abruptly when I entered rooms. I'd walk into the kitchen, and they'd both go quiet, looking at me like I'd interrupted something important. Lauren would give me this tight smile and change the subject, but the damage was done. She began questioning me out of nowhere, asking if I really liked Jake, why he felt like I was different when she wasn't around, whether I resented having him in our lives. Every time I tried to defend myself, she'd counter with, why would my son lie about this? And that's the trap, right? How do you defend yourself against vague accusations? How do you prove you didn't say something mean or give someone a certain look? Jake was making claims that were impossible to disprove, building this narrative of me as a two-faced jerk who only showed his true colors when we were alone. The fights became regular occurrences. At least twice a week, Lauren would confront me about something Jake had said, that I'd snapped at him for leaving dishes in the sink, that I'd made a comment about his grades, that I'd rolled my eyes when he asked for something. None of it was true, but every time I tried to defend myself, Lauren would ask if I was calling her son a liar. And what was I supposed to say to that? I realized pretty quickly that Jake was playing this perfectly, never making accusations so specific I could disprove them, but consistent enough that Lauren started believing the pattern. He was building a case against me, one small lie at a time. Then 2 weeks ago, everything exploded in the absolute worst way possible. I came home from work around 6 p.m., tired from dealing with a difficult client all day. Lauren was waiting by the door, and the look on her face made my stomach drop. She grabbed my arm, not gentle, not affectionate, grabbed it hard enough that I knew something was very wrong. Her voice was shaking as she told me we needed to talk about what happened with Jake. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'd been at work since 7 that morning, hadn't even seen Jake. She pulled me into the living room where Jake was sitting on the couch, and my confusion turned to panic when I saw his face. He looked scared, actually frightened, eyes wide and a bit red like he'd been crying. Lauren pulled up Jake's sleeve to show me a bruise on his forearm, dark purple, about the size of a hand. She had tears in her eyes as she said Jake told her I'd grabbed him that morning, that I'd been getting aggressive when she wasn't home, that he was scared to be alone with me. My world tilted. The room seemed to spin as I tried to process what she was saying. I have never, ever laid a hand on that kid. Never. Not once in 4 years. I was shouting now, desperate, telling her it wasn't true, that I'd never touched him, that I'd been at work all day, that she could check the timestamps on my badge swipes at the office if she didn't believe me. But she stepped back from me like I was dangerous, like I was some stranger who'd just threatened her. She told me she hadn't wanted to believe Jake, that for months he'd been telling her things, and she told herself he was just being a dramatic teenager. But the things he was saying were too specific, too consistent to ignore anymore. I grabbed her hands, begging her to really think about whether she'd ever seen me be violent in 4 years together, to consider that maybe something else was going on here. She pulled away and said that was what made it so scary, that Jake claimed I was like 2 different people. That's when I saw him, Jake still sitting on the couch, watching this entire scene unfold. For just a split second, maybe half a second, His expression was completely neutral, almost curious, like he was watching a science experiment to see how it would turn out. Then he saw me looking, and his face instantly crumpled into fear. He ran to his mother, calling for her, saying he'd heard yelling and begging her not to let me hurt her. That performance was what broke Lauren completely. She told me to pack a bag and leave, said she needed time to figure things out and make sure her son was safe, that I needed to get out of the house until she could think clearly. I packed with shaking hands, my mind reeling, throwing clothes into trash bags because I couldn't find my suitcase. As I loaded my car in the driveway, I looked up one more time and saw them in the upstairs window. Jake had his arm around his mother, comforting her like the devoted son. But when he thought I couldn't see his face clearly through the glass, I caught him looking down at his phone and smiling. That smile confirmed what I already knew in my gut. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a troubled kid acting out. This was calculated, planned, executed. And as I drove to my brother's house with my entire life in trash bags in my back seat, one question kept hammering in my mind. How long had this 17-year-old been planning to destroy my marriage? And more importantly, why? I spent the first week at my brother Dave's house in complete shock. Barely eating, barely sleeping, just replaying everything over and over like a broken film reel. Trying to find the moment I'd missed, the warning sign I should have seen. Dave kept telling me to fight back, to call Lauren, to make her listen. But what was the point? She'd already decided I was the monster in this story. No amount of talking would change that. I called her maybe 50 times that first week. Every single call went straight to voicemail. I texted her, begging for a chance to talk, to explain, to show her that something was very wrong with this situation. She never responded. By the second week, the shock started wearing off and something else took its place. Something cold and analytical. I started thinking about all those little moments over the past months, connecting dots I hadn't even known were there. Jake's perfect performance on the stairs. That split second of curiosity before he put on his terrified act. That was too smooth to be his first time. He'd practiced that. The bruise on his arm that appeared at the perfect time, right after our biggest fight about the car. Too convenient. Those whispered conversations with Lauren that stopped when I entered rooms. What had he been filling her head with all those months? I realized I needed help. Real professional help. Professional. Because if Jake had been manipulating this situation the whole time, I needed proof. Solid, undeniable proof. I called a lawyer first. A family law attorney named Patricia Thompson, who came highly recommended from a guy at work who'd gone through a messy divorce. She listened to my story without interrupting, taking notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she looked at me seriously and asked one question. Do you own the house? I told her yes. I'd bought it before the marriage with my own money. My name was the only one on the deed. She nodded and said that was good, that it gave me leverage, but we needed to move quickly on divorce paperwork if that's what I wanted. I told her I wasn't sure yet. That part of me still hoped Lauren would come to her senses. Patricia gave me this sad smile and said, in my experience, when someone chooses to believe the worst about you without evidence, they've already made their choice. That hit me hard, but I knew she was right. Then I did something that felt crazy but necessary. I hired a tech consultant, a guy named Brandon who'd helped Dave's company recover data after a cyber attack. I explained the situation and asked if there was any way to legally access Jake's digital footprint. Brandon didn't seem surprised at all. Teenagers leave digital trails everywhere, he said. Social media, cloud storage, messaging apps. If he's been planning this, there's evidence somewhere. Question is whether we can access it legally. He explained that as a minor living in my house, technically still my house since I owned it, there were legal gray areas around accessing devices and accounts, especially if I could make a case for concern about his well-being. It felt invasive. It felt wrong, but I needed to know the truth. Let me look into your phone records first, Brandon suggested. See what we can pull from your family plan. No hacking required for that. It's your account. It took Brandon less than a week to find the first bombshell. He called me on a Thursday evening, his voice tense. You need to see this. Can you come to my office? I drove over immediately. Brandon had printouts spread across his desk. Phone records, bank statements he'd helped me pull from accounts I had legal access to. Our joint account, the one Lauren and I had set up for household expenses and savings, had been bleeding money for almost 6 months. $8,000 in total, withdrawn in increments small enough that I hadn't noticed while working 60-hour weeks and trusting my wife to manage the household finances. The charges were for gaming equipment, expensive clothes, electronics, food delivery sometimes twice a day. All of it tied back to Jake's spending. But here's what made my blood run cold. Lauren had to have known. Several of the charges required parental approval for a minor. Bank statements showed she'd transferred money from our savings to cover overdrafts Jake had created. She'd been hiding it from me, covering for him, probably because she knew I'd say no to that kind of frivolous spending. Brandon found something else too. He pulled our credit report, perfectly legal since it was my credit, and found that Lauren had applied for a credit card in just her name 2 months ago, right around when Jake's campaign against me had intensified. She'd maxed it out almost immediately. Another $4,000, mostly on stuff for Jake. When Brandon showed me everything, I felt physically sick. This wasn't just Jake manipulating his mother. Lauren had been actively deceiving me too, choosing her son over our marriage and our financial future. There's more, Brandon said, pulling up something on his laptop. Your family phone plan includes cloud backup for all devices. Jake's phone has been backing up to your account this whole time. He showed me the data. Deleted text messages that had been automatically backed up before Jake erased them from his phone. Messages between Jake and his friends going back almost a year, talking about his plan. Mom's starting to doubt him, one message from 8 months ago said. Just gotta push a little harder, and the old man's gone. In another conversation from 6 months ago, Jake had literally written out his strategy to a friend named Tyler. Mom always believes me when I cry. It's so easy. There were messages about the car too, about how I was a cheap jerk who didn't understand that Jake deserved nice things, about how once I was gone, his mom would finally sell that boring house and they could move to the city where Tyler and his other friends lived. But the worst message, the one that made everything crystal clear, was from 3 weeks ago, right before everything exploded. Almost there, Jake had written to Tyler. Got the bruise ready. Going to show Mom tonight. This should be the final nail. He'd planned the bruise. He'd deliberately hurt himself to frame me. I need you to see something else, Brandon said quietly, clicking on a video file. This was in his cloud storage, probably recorded by accident. Looks like he meant to take a photo but hit video instead. The video showed Jake in his bathroom, alone. He was looking at his forearm, then deliberately slamming it against the edge of the bathroom counter, wincing but doing it again, and again, until a dark bruise started forming. This better work, he muttered to himself in the video. I sat there watching this 17-year-old kid abuse himself to destroy my marriage, and I felt physically sick. What kind of person does this? What had I done to deserve this level of calculated cruelty? Brandon showed me more messages. Conversations between Jake and Tyler about their plan for after the divorce. Once they split, Mom will want to leave this boring town, Jake had written. She'll sell the house and we can finally move to the city where everything actually happens. Plus, without him around, she'll have more money to spend on me. It was all about money and location. Jake wanted a different life, a more exciting life in the city, where his friends had moved after graduation, and I was the obstacle. The house was in my name, so Lauren couldn't sell it while we were married. But if we divorced, Jake figured she'd want a fresh start somewhere else. He'd finally get what he wanted, and I'd be erased from their lives like I'd never existed. I had everything now. The financial fraud, the manipulative messages, the video of him creating the bruise, all of it, backed up and documented and completely legal since it was all from accounts and devices on my family plan. Patricia Thompson looked over everything and told me this was more than enough for a divorce with a very favorable settlement. This is actually one of the clearest cases of fraud and manipulation I've seen, she said. The video alone is damning. She warned me, though, that exposing Jake's manipulation might damage my relationship with Lauren permanently. I almost laughed. What relationship? The woman had thrown me out based on lies, without even giving me a chance to defend myself. She'd chosen her son over 4 years of marriage without a second thought. That night, 3 weeks after she'd kicked me out, I finally got a text from Lauren. Have you had time to think about your behavior? It read. Jake says he's willing to give you another chance if you apologize to him and commit to doing better. We can talk about you coming home if you've really reflected on what you've done. I stared at that message for a long time. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She wasn't apologizing for not hearing my side. She was demanding I apologize to the kid who'd orchestrated this entire nightmare. The kid who'd stolen $8,000. The kid who'd bruised himself to frame me for abuse. The kid who'd been planning my removal from their lives for almost a year. I texted back just 4 words, come over tomorrow, 3 p.m. She responded immediately. Does this mean you're ready to make things right? I didn't answer. Instead, I spent the rest of the night organizing all the evidence into a folder, printing out the messages, the bank statements, the credit card bills, everything. Brandon had even put the video on a USB drive for me. Tomorrow, Lauren was going to learn the truth about her son, and our marriage was going to end. There was no coming back from this. Lauren arrived at the coffee shop at exactly 3 p.m. I'd chosen this location deliberately. Neutral territory, public space, plenty of witnesses. I wanted her to see everything with other people around, so she couldn't make a scene or accuse me of intimidating her. I watched her through the window as she parked. She looked tired, thinner than I remembered, with dark circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. For a moment, I felt a pang of something like the love I'd had for her. Then I remembered 3 weeks of silence, the accusations, the way she'd chosen to believe the worst of me without question. She walked in with this expression on her face, half hopeful, half nervous, probably expecting me to be broken and apologetic, ready to beg for forgiveness. The coffee shop was busy enough for privacy, but not so empty we were alone. I'd positioned myself at a corner table where I could see the parking lot through the window. She slid into the seat across from me with a cautious smile and immediately started talking about how she and Jake had been discussing things. How maybe if I was willing to go to therapy and work on my anger issues, we could find a way forward. I let her talk for about 30 seconds before I held up my hand to stop her. Then I slid a large manila folder across the table. She looked at it, confused, then back at me. "Open it," I said flatly. She hesitated, then picked up the folder with shaking hands. The first thing she saw was the divorce paperwork. Official, stamped by the courthouse, already signed by my lawyer. Her face went white. She looked up at me with genuine shock, starting to say, "We can work through—" "Keep looking," I interrupted. She flipped through pages. I watched her face change as she saw the bank statements, the credit card bills, the highlighted charges showing $8,000 of our money spent by Jake over 6 months. "I can explain," she started. "Keep going." Then she got to the printed messages. Jake's conversations with his friends where he'd laid out his entire manipulation strategy. I saw the exact moment she read the words her son had written about how easy it was to make her believe him. How the old man would be gone soon. Her hands started trembling. She kept shaking her head like she could deny what was right in front of her. "These can't be real," she whispered. "These could be faked." That's when I pulled out my phone and played the video. Volume low enough that only she could hear. Jake's voice came through clearly as he slammed his own arm against the bathroom counter over and over, creating the bruise he'd shown his mother. "This better work," his voice said from the phone. Lauren's face crumbled. She dropped the papers onto the table, her hand over her mouth, started mumbling about how he'd told her I grabbed him, how he'd cried, how he seemed so scared. "He played you," I said coldly. "For months, he systematically destroyed our marriage because he wanted you to sell my house and move to the city with him. It's all there in the messages." She was sobbing now, trying to keep quiet in the public space, her whole body shaking as she tried to process that her son had orchestrated this entire nightmare. "Why didn't you make me see?" she asked through tears. "Why didn't you tell me?" That question broke something in me. "I tried," I said, my voice hard. "I begged you to talk to me. I called you 50 times. You wouldn't even answer. You chose to believe Jake without evidence, without even asking for my side of the story. You threw me out of my own house based on lies." She reached across the table for my hand. I pulled back. "I was protecting my child," she said desperately. "What was I supposed to do?" "You were supposed to be my wife," I said, my voice rising slightly before I caught myself. "You were supposed to give me the benefit of the doubt after 4 years of marriage. You were supposed to ask questions, demand proof, something. But you didn't. Because deep down, you'd already chosen Jake over me. The truth hung in the air between us. She'd made her choice weeks ago, maybe months ago, when Jake's whispered poison first started working on her. I was just collateral damage. That's when the coffee shop door slammed open with force. Jake walked in. He'd apparently been waiting in the car outside and couldn't stand not knowing what was happening. He spotted us immediately and stormed over, his face red with anger. "What are you doing to my mom?" he demanded loudly enough that other customers looked over. Then he saw the papers scattered on the table. His expression changed for just a second, real fear flashing across his face before he tried to recover. "Whatever he's telling you is a lie," Jake said quickly to his mother. "He's trying to turn you against me. This is exactly what I warned you about." I picked up my phone and turned the screen toward him. The video of him creating the bruise was paused on the frame where you could clearly see his face. Jake's expression went through shock, panic, then settled on anger. "You went through my stuff," he said loudly. "You had no right. That's illegal. People were definitely watching us now. You framed me for abuse," I said calmly. "So I had every right." Lauren was staring at her son like she'd never seen him before. "Tell me it's not real," she begged him, her voice breaking. "Tell me you didn't do this." And that's when Jake's mask finally came off completely. So what if I did? He said, his voice getting louder. You were miserable with him anyway. He's boring and cheap, and he's not my dad. We should have left this stupid town a year ago. Lauren gasped like she'd been physically struck, her eyes darting around at the other customers who were now openly staring. Jake kept going, seemingly not caring about the audience. All his friends had moved to the city after graduating, he said. He was stuck here because of me. She deserved better than this boring life, they both did. Once she divorced me and sold the house, they could finally have a real life. It's my house, I interrupted quietly. Lauren can't sell it. His face went even redder. He started talking about lawsuits, about how his friend's mom had gotten half of everything in her divorce, about how there were laws. That's when I saw it. The moment Lauren finally understood what her son had become. Right there in the middle of a crowded coffee shop, she whispered, "You destroyed my marriage for money and a change of location? You made me believe my husband was abusing you so we could move to be near your friends?" Jake tried to backtrack, suddenly aware of all the people watching. Started stammering that it wasn't like that he just wanted them to be happy together, without me ruining everything. I cut through it all. You have 30 days to find a place, I said firmly but quietly. It's stated in the divorce papers. After that, I'm taking back my house. Lauren looked at me with such devastation. Please, she begged, give me time to process this, to fix what's broken. But I was done. There's nothing to fix, I said. You chose to believe I was a monster without evidence. You let your son manipulate you for months and never once questioned it. Even now, knowing the truth, you're asking me for another chance. But you never gave me a first chance. She broke down completely, sobbing into her hands, while Jake stood there with his arms crossed, looking defiant and angry, even though his entire scheme had collapsed around him. I looked at them, this mother and son who destroyed my trust in my marriage, and felt nothing but emptiness where love used to be. I stood up from the table, gathered my copy of the divorce papers, and told them again, 30 days, then you're out of my house. Lauren tried to grab my arm. I pulled away gently and walked toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear Lauren's sobs, and Jake starting to argue with her, his voice rising again, as he probably tried to spin this somehow. Make it my fault. I walked out of that coffee shop, got in my car, and through the window I could see them still at the table. Lauren with her head in her hands, crying while Jake gestured angrily, probably still blaming me for everything even as the evidence of his manipulation sat right there in front of them. A month later, my lawyer called to confirm they'd moved out on time. They'd found a small two-bedroom apartment across town, nothing like the house they'd left behind. Patricia mentioned that Lauren had tried to fight for some financial settlement, but she had no legal ground to stand on. The house was mine before the marriage, bought with my money, and she'd been complicit in the theft of $8,000 from our joint account. Dave told me through mutual friends that Lauren was devastated, barely functioning at work, that Jake was making her life miserable, blaming her for not moving faster, for not selling the house somehow, for ruining his plan. Their relationship was apparently strained to the breaking point. Jake was treating her with the same manipulative contempt he'd shown me, now that his scheme had failed, and he was stuck in the same boring town he'd tried so hard to escape. Part of me felt sad about it sometimes, late at night when my house was too quiet, and I'd remember the good times before Jake's poison had taken root. But mostly I felt relief, like I dodged something that would have eventually destroyed me completely. You can't build a marriage with someone who doesn't trust you. And you can't love someone who'll throw you away the moment it becomes convenient. I'd learned the hardest lesson of my life, one that cost me 4 years and a marriage I thought would last forever. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way.